everyone, and welcome to Nerds Without Pants, episode 98. I am Julian, and I am not joined as always by Patrick. He's snowed under by school and lots of homework and the stresses of getting a new degree. I am not joined as always by Angelo, because he's still recovering from tonsillectomy. So yeah, it's just gonna be a one-man show. No, I'm just kidding. No, I wouldn't do that to you. One-man shows are usually not entertaining unless you have somebody super funny and entertaining, like our special guest. He is a podcaster. He is a comedian. He is an artist. He is a fellow Star Trek fan.
Oh, yeah.
We have Mike from 30 Podcasts I'm Not Doing.
Hi, NWP audience. I'm Mike, harbinger of death, apparently. Comes Mike, the king of darkness. No one else is allowed to show up. Jeez. I when you said you're dropping like flies, I was like, oh yeah. Patrick Remake was like, oh, I forgot the only reason I'm here is because Angela's sick.
That's not the only reason you're here, to be fair.
Okay. That's fair.
It's funny because, the TNB guys were on last episode and they're like, oh man, Angelo's not here. This sucks. And it's like, well, at least they got Patrick. You just get me, and that's just so sad.
I love it. I love the intimate stuff. You said comedian. I work with comics and I hang out in the comedy scene, but like, when people introduce me, I'll often be like, hey, no, don't say comedian. Like, say podcaster. Because my co-host of, Chopped and Screwed, another podcast I do, was like, you should start saying that as both a mark of pride and shame. And then I liked it, like, it's sort of like owning the things that people make fun of you about. I was like, hey, like, comedian is an old man word. Like, I like Jackie Mason, but Jackie Mason's an old man. And I don't want people to think I'm old, so I'm going to say podcasters because I'm new and hip and I got a computer. So I like that you say glowing things about me being funny. So I'm happy when anyone says comedian and me and not just like, he's a podcaster and a jerk. So it's good to hear.
Well, it's funny you say that too, because I almost feel that podcaster at this point is like old man thing. It's like, you should have said I'm a YouTuber. I'm a Twitcher. I do Twitch too. You should Twitch this show. It's tough because like people that watch my Twitch, they're usually fans of the podcast and they're like, it's hilarious. There's no reason for this to be on Twitch. Right. It's just dude talking into a mic. I'm not playing anything. I used to do mobile phone stuff. I used to do mobile phone games. And then my last Twitch, I did like a live cartoon. Like I had a cartoon synced up where it was live lip sync for me in this cartoon. And so I had people ask me questions, but people were asking me questions on Twitter because I don't have Twitch followers. So all I was doing for like a half an hour was naming weird names of stuff. Like I was like, what's the worst name for like an air conditioning unit? And then I would go through and do that for like, and my fans were like dying, but they were all like, yeah, this is not something you put on Twitch. But we're learning. Yeah, no, I'm a Twitcher. I'm not an old man. I would never have a podcast. What's that? I'm young. I'm young. I don't even use that. I just Snapchat out my ideas and then throw them in the trash. I don't even care about copyright. It's all public domain, whatever. Yeah, and we did meet on Twitter, actually, through your podcast, 30 Podcasts I'm Not Doing, which I highly recommend people go check out that episode. I mean, all the show in general, but the episode that I was on, it was fun for me because there's that moment when I first bring up Star Trek where I could almost see, like, we weren't on camera, but I could almost see the glimmer in your eye was like, oh, we can talk about this. And then that ended up being most of the show.
Almost 100%. And what was cool was like, one of your co-hosts recommended you, right? And so like that's how we actually found out about it. Cause I put out a feeler, like the concept of the episode was, I'm just going to meet someone that I've never met before. And like, we're going to be like, it didn't matter if you were a podcaster, but like, that's how it came up. And like, so I hadn't even heard your podcast. Like, I just knew I had your Twitter handle, I think, for a week. And I think 3 days into us talking, like, oh, I have a podcast too. And I checked it out like the day after and I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly the person that I could have never shut up about Star Trek with.
Yeah, it was a really cool, because that's the thing, is that maybe people don't understand if they listen to that episode, is that we literally did not say a word to each other, like, verbally until, like, I got onto that call. Like, that was all as it was happening. So that was a very unique podcasting experience for sure.
People liked that episode because they were saying, like, and I just go listen to it. But in the short of it, like, I'm very like explosive when I have someone else to bounce off of. And so there's these few minutes in the beginning where I'm like quiet because I'm like, he's not here yet. I'm so excited. I don't know what to do. It's a good episode. I gotta warn you though. I have been told by every single person I've ever podcasted with, I'm like you, I do the production end. And I've had people that don't do the production end reach across the table and turn off the show when I've started to talk about, Star Wars or Star Trek. And they're like, hey, you can't do that. That's way too much for the normal person to handle. Like that amount of rage and anger and passion is not like, you can't do that on air.
That's so weird to me too, because I feel that like podcasting in general is like such an inherently nerdy thing. Like podcasts themselves, I think are still in this place where it's like, that's an internet thing, like that. It's not
less than 1%, less than 1% of the world's population listen to podcasts as compared to like 25% of the world's population having constant access to television.
Right. Yeah. So it's a weird thing to me where it's like, oh no, that's too much. All that talk about Klingons. I don't like that.
But it's like that to an nth degree. And the cool thing about this show is like, I love this show. And
well, thank you.
But it should be noted when I do shows, I sort of have a thing where I do want About Chopped. But really, the secret is it's not About Chopped. We mostly get people to vaguely talk about cooking shows, but then we get them drunk and hang out and talk. But, for me, it's like I try to keep this thing where it's like, we can't be media criticizers because our job is to like, this show, it's a weird thing on the internet. We're on different teams. This is a media criticism show. I'm a media creation show. One thing the internet has blurred over the years is like, hey, that's different teams. We're like, I don't have to like critics, like I'm allowed to say, as someone that creates, I'm allowed to say at any moment, like, oh yeah, I do this thing where I review. Oh, go fuck yourself. I do this thing where I critique. Oh, shut the fuck up. Like, I'm allowed to do that at any moment because I'm on the other team. That being said, I love the show. I'm pretty much agree with everything that you guys say for the most part. Or I never don't enjoy the way you say it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we try. I think, one thing that's just kind of become apparent to me, and we'll get into like the main show here in a sec, but like over the last year and a half or so, I've kind of realized where the three of us fall, where I'm kind of like I look at the business side of video games, and then Angelo is just super knowledgeable about like the history, and like the music and stuff like that. And then Patrick is like the star child. Patrick has all of the like crazy ideas and he's very artistic about it. And, the three of us together, like kind of, we hit all fronts, I think, where, there's definitely something missing when one of us is missing.
So what the hell is about to happen today?
I don't know what's going to happen today. I do know that we're still doing the stage select, damn it. So we're going to hit that right now.
Has Patrick ever seen The Last Starfighter? Because that's who he is to me. He's like,
he probably has.
That's who he is. It's like he's the phenom kid that he knows not how good he is, and one day he'll be lifted from us, and then he'll be like, "You need to defeat them playing Battletoads."
Ooh, if it's Battletoads, I think we're all screwed.
The game isn't that hard. Okay, I don't want to go into The Last Starfighter. It's one of my least favorite movies in the world. It's playing Galaga. Like, I've seen people pick up Galaga and beat the game. Like, that day. So, it's like, what? Okay, sorry, I said it. It's your show. It's your show. Take control, Julian.
If you are also a person who's finished Battletoads and you share that with Patrick, then I must bow to you, because as far as I'm concerned, that game has 3 levels.
Hell no. I died
before.
Once and was like, this is the stupidest shit in the world. There's no way this, cause I played it late and I'd heard about it being like hard, but like, I wasn't playing it on the NES. So I was like, oh, it's broken. It's not, there's no way this game is this hard. Like, this is a bad copy. Let's bring it back. And like, we went back to the store and they're like, nah, it's just like, it's Battletoads. You don't know?
they basically gave you the speech at the end of Chinatown.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's Battletoads. There's nothing you can
forget
do.
about it, Mike. It's Battletoads. Sorry, we have a segment. Sorry.
So I take it, Mike, that Battletoads is not a world that you would like to live in if you were not one of the Battletoads?
Well, I don't know what the fuck happens in that game. That's the other thing too, is like, what else is going on? Like I couldn't even answer that for Battletoads. Like they're right. So they're sort of like on a ship sometimes and like on the top of a thing.
There's sentient rats, and then there's a really hot, busty dominatrix, / empress / witch, I forget what she actually is.
But what's going on in like, they're walking aren't they walking on top of a ship? Like what's under the ship? What else is going on?
There's a ship. I think you're thinking of Battletoads Double Dragon, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that one, they start off on a ship. Battletoads, they just start off in like a canyon. I don't know. That game, I don't know.
But in that universe, I could be anything. They're toads. They're specifically the breed Battletoads. But I saw no humans. Or there's the one dominatrix.
Right, yeah, she's definitely human.
So I assume there's a harem.
And then there's, yeah. And and I think their leader, the Battletoads leader, is like a mallard or something. Like,
oh my god.
Some sort of humanoid bird. I don't know. Rare in the NES days. That's all. That's kind of all you have to say. But this stage select, I picked. Well, it's kind of funny. So I picked a topic which I initially I thought it was like a real simple one, and then as I started thinking about it, I was like, no, this is actually a lot tougher than I thought it was. But the topic is what video game world would you like to live in, provided that you are not the hero? And then I feel bad because Mike's Twitter handle is actually Our Hero Comic, but you can't be the hero in the world that you've chosen.
Well, yeah, I like Dumbledore said, I don't have much time for heroes. You know, to be a hero, you gotta be brave, and he said it in the movies, and I don't care that he doesn't say it in the books. Watch one thing, not the other. Yeah, so should we go into my answer first?
Yeah, I'm really curious about what you've got for us.
So I did a podcast a while ago where it was an extension of, I think it might even is in the 30 podcast feed, but the idea was like covering five, because I try not to do nerd stuff. And I was like, I'm going to do 5 minutes on these topics that are my passion, but I try not to talk about because I could talk about them forever and I don't really want to do that all the time. So it was like, I spent 5 minutes on Harry Potter and 5 minutes on Dragon Ball Z and 5 minutes on, what was the third one? Maybe Pokemon? I don't know. So, my Harry Potter point was, you know, like, why do you want to be in Harry Potter? And the person was like, I want to fly. You can fly in this universe. You're just not allowed to because you don't know how. It's like, what else do you want to do? You want to shoot spells from your wands? Like, yeah, I want to like shoot spells. Like, well, that's a gun. You can buy a gun, but people that shoot them at people are dicks. So that's what that spell does. Like, you want a stunning spell, like we can go get a stun gun, but you be a dick. And like I just went through it with everything, and I was like if you like Star Wars, you want to be a Jedi. Like, the hero never makes sense because like you want to be a Jedi. Plenty of religious groups that'll hand you a weapon until you have magic powers. Oh, it's just countless. You can do it tomorrow. No experience, no resume. So it's like, for me, I've thought about this for a while, and it extends into Game of Thrones, where I say there's no good character on that show, because even like the best one, who is by far Tyrion, like, he's a murdering, backstabbing criminal who would kill anyone if they crossed him. Like, there's no one good to be in that universe.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel the same way about that show.
So, it gets narrowed and narrowed down into Michael finding what his actual answer was after yelling at himself about his own bit in his house in his notes. Rich Hill, find eventually. I
feel like that sentence ended with a question mark and an exclamation point.
Everything I say to myself ends with a question point. What am I doing? Zelda. Here's my answer. All the Zelda games, one of the brilliant things about them, and I know Patrick isn't here to spoil a game this week, so I'm sorry about that. But now my whole point is to like jab him, so I have to get backed on so he can get his revenge. This is my plot. In Zelda, one of the big mechanics of the game is the Triforce is so powerful that it resets. At control of it, you're able to reset the universe. And Link ultimately as opposed to other philosophies, as opposed to Metal Gear Solid or Halo, where those games are so much about like practical fixing. You know, the flood is real. How can we save what we have? This ultimate weapon is real. How can we like have, when Zelda makes a choice that like, no, with ultimate power, with actual ultimate power, the Triforce, you can reset everything bad that has happened, and that will make the universe better. When you look at Zelda's side characters, they often don't know about the struggle going on. In Skyward Sword, they are straight up ignorant. They make fun of Link. They like the whole time. That game's hilarious when like they're like, oh, you do nothing. Like, I guess you're learning some new tricks. Like, that's amazing. Like, I just killed everyone. And if you're one of the people, if you're like one of the, I guess he's an elf, right? And so like, if you're an elf, it's great. It's always great. It's never bad. It's never bad. Like even when you go back to I think in Ocarina, at one point you go back, right? No, at one point you go back in Ocarina and his little elf village at the beginning is all messed up. But I don't remember when. But like, I think for the most part, you're fine. Like, you don't even know it's happening. And with the Triforce, you probably never do know it happens.
That's a really interesting point. Like, I don't play enough of the Zelda games to be up on the lore.
Oh, really, Julian?
No, yeah, I don't.
I know you don't. I've been binging this show.
That makes a lot of sense with, like, basically the story being retold, you know, ad nauseum. Is like, okay, yeah, it's just a reset. Like, this, you know, this is, I'm trying to think of something, there was something kind of similar to that. Oh, it's sort of like The Matrix, you know, like when you find out that in the second movie that, you know, this is just a cycle. You know, that the one comes up and then things happen and he thinks that he's helping, but then really what happens is they destroy Zion, but they leave enough people to like, you know, seed the next version of Zion. And this has happened like 8 times already.
It's the reverse of it, where it's like, it's hopeless. Like, because in that one, every time the Matrix resets, everyone plugged in dies.
True. Yeah. Yeah. They lose the whole crop.
So for that one, right, it is hopeless. But, and I mean, I know I don't listen to a lot of internet theories, and I'm sure some people will say they don't forget, but for the most part, in those games, I've never met an elf that was like, oh yeah, isn't it suck how we're all oppressed? Or pretty much like, and I know you don't like Zelda, maybe we can get into that, but like, for me, the whole thing is like, Link is a true hero in the way that like you see most heroes in real life, where it's like never once does Link say in the games like, hey, shut up. Like, you guys are jerks. I'm the best at doing stuff. And like, he's just, you know, out there to save people. Like, that's the way heroes are. Like, we walk around and until it affects our lives, like, we don't know half the stuff the people that like save us do. And like, that's the way it is until you're in peril. Like, I don't want to spoil Skyward Sword, but especially given that game, like that theme is like drilled into you. Like, only the people that have to do the struggle in society really ever know about the struggle.
Yeah, no, and those are really good points. And like you said, like kind of the elves in most of the Zelda games are kind of just, they're usually pretty happy. They're usually grinning like idiots when you go talk to them, and they're just kind of going about their day-to-day lives. You know, it's usually not until like, and maybe not even then, because like usually it's like, you know, Ganon wants to capture the princess or he wants to get the Triforce, but you know, your average citizen isn't going to know that. Like, they're in a village over here. Zelda got captured in a castle, which they've never been to. So it's, you know, it's like, it's almost like whoever's president, like, it kind of doesn't matter because, like, at the end of the day, I'm still going to, like, get up and go to work and do my thing and, you know, like, it's kind of, it's just kind of that. No, that's really good. And to be fair, like, you know, I do like the Zelda games. I just don't love them to the extent of like Patrick. Like, there are games in the series that I have played and thoroughly enjoyed, but I haven't played all of them because I think.
How'd you play Majora's Mask though? That game's, I'll say a dissenting opinion. That game's dog shit. That's a dog shit game. It's confusing. The story's dog shit. You gotta scroll through all these weird faces and it's dog shit. In the beginning of the game makes no sense unless you've played it before, unless you have a player's guide. The game makes no sense, but you like Link Between Worlds, like, I think anyone can pick that game up and be like, boom, side scroller, like platformer with a weird element. It's essentially a modified Fez. I get this right away. I don't even have to know what's going on. But Majora, like, that's a weird one, Julian. That's bizarre.
Well, you know what? It's a couple things. Like, on that one, and I ended up not finishing it, but like, I like that they played with the formula, and it's kind of an like, that time mechanic thing, like, I appreciate when games do that, because they do that in the Dead Rising games, and they did that in one of the Breath of Fire games, where it's like, it's designed to where you have to start over, but then you have a knowledge of the events coming, at you, and so then you like change things. But, yeah, it just felt like a different take on the series. But yeah, Link Between Worlds, that's my Zelda game. Like, that's easily my favorite one. And then probably Zelda 3 after that.
Which is 3? Is it just called 3? Or is that?
It's, Link to the Past.
Link to the Past.
I always called it Zelda 3. Yeah.
Time elements in games are where I get blown away. And like, that'll, like Pikmin, I wrote a blog post for 30 Podcasts a while ago that was like about how Pikmin is the essence of life. Where it's like, you only have a certain amount of time. Does that make any difference? And somehow when that reality comes into the game, you're like, oh man, that day just went by. Like it feels so real life. And like, for turn off your video game systems on Wii's and things like that, which like, the only game I've ever gotten it from is on Animal Crossing. And to be fair, I should be asked every 15 minutes, you really need to be playing Animal Crossing? I would like it if that game almost at every action was like, are you sure you don't want to save and quit? Because it's so addictive. But those time elements always trip me out. I love that kind of stuff. And Pikmin is, that's it. You only have a certain amount of time. And is it worth it to do it? How are you living your life? And does that matter? I love those sort of definite things.
Yeah, and Pikmin in general, like, I like, after you've played the game for a while, you realize it's almost like this, like, light bulb moment where it's like, oh, I could have done this so much better. Like, right, like I could have been so much more efficient.
Oh my God. The best analogy for life is I'm trying to use grass to drag this heavy clock across a field. I mean, there's no better analogy for how useless I am at living. Then, I shouldn't have, this slug is stopping me from dragging this cog across a field. I'm dumb. I just want to go home.
Oh,
so what was your choice?
Well, okay, so here's the thing is that I thought that I had my answer locked in, and then I was like, no, I don't want to do that, and I kept thinking about other worlds and stuff, and I think that the caveat that that you're just kind of yourself, you can't be the hero of the game, really put a kibosh on it. Like, I was like, oh, like the Mushroom Kingdom, like the world of Super Mario Brothers, like that'd be really cool. And then I was like, wait, but there's only one girl. And she's like Mario's and maybe Bowser's, I don't know. There's weird stuff going on there, but like everybody else is just like a sentient mushroom, and I don't want to like hang out with sentient mushrooms for the rest of my life. So that one was just like right out the window. But it ended up, I'm trying not to be a broken record, but when it comes to like where we are right now in society, like I kind of have like a cynical view on it. Like a lot of the technology that we have, a lot of the like, like the lack of privacy and stuff, and the fact that we're giving it away freely, it's like, oh yeah, let me link this app with all these other apps, and so they know everything that I have. Like, it was the scariest thing. Like I happened to order something on Amazon today, and I didn't log out, and then I logged into Facebook, and then they had an ad for Amazon that actually had the season of Naruto that I had been watching on Amazon Prime. And I was like, that's creepy. That's like super creepy.
I had a similar thing happen recently where, a dating app of mine all of a sudden knew that I went to New York University. That is nowhere online. That is nowhere in the things linked with that app. And I logged on. I was like, not happy that you're showing that right now. I'm not ecstatic. Don't worry. We put in your personal information. Calm down. We did it for you. You don't have to do it. It's fine. It's like, what? That's creepy. The exact season. They're just looking at what you're doing.
Yeah, it's and stuff like that really weirds me out. And so I end up having like this, like, most days I have this really like down view where I literally think like, man, I wish that I'd been born like in 1930 because I'd either be like dead by now or I'd be too old for this shit and it wouldn't matter, But then there's other parts of like living in the world, in the age that we do that are really exciting. Like when you, like, I just started listening to this podcast. It's been around for a long time, but I just discovered it's called Mysterious Universe. And they do a lot of like fringy stuff, like aliens and paranormal stuff, but they have a news section at the beginning. And so they'll get like kind of the interesting techie and science news and stuff like that. And, so they've been following like the SpaceX stuff a lot, and like apparently, and stuff besides that. So like apparently they did, like scientists developed like an actual working warp drive. Like this is a thing that they've discovered that would actually work, and we're probably years away from it like being viable, but it's like literal warp drive, like in our lifetime, and stuff like that is amazing. And so then I'm like, oh, wait, maybe things will be okay. Like maybe it'll be more like the Star Trek future and less the Fallout future, like that's what I hope anyway. And so to that end, like this is a very rambly way of me saying that it'd be Mass Effect, which obvious choice is obvious for Julian. But, my thinking is, and actually JD, one of the writers of Pixelbit, he said he would have picked Mass Effect, but he says it's too dangerous. But my thinking is that if you're not Commander Shepard, if you're not on one of the, like, Federation fleet or ships, things are pretty okay for you. Like if you're just like on a colony somewhere and you're just kind of living your life and maybe, you're helping colonize a planet or you're a scientist or a researcher, the world of Mass Effect is pretty darn cool. It's basically Star Trek, but with the Force. So that's nifty. Like I just love all of the technology. You can fix everything with, Omnigel. You've got the med packs to like, take care of you. You've got bionics. You've got amazing spaceships. You've got aliens that you can interact with. So I just think that'd be like a really awesome place to live. And I do feel that for the most part, it is a more positive look at the future where so much, Mike, I feel like we're around the same age. And I think that we've seen this in our lifetimes where the like Hollywood and fiction version of the future has become so bleak in the last 20, 30 years.
Oh yeah. I have frequently, I now have a running like routine of when someone says dystopian and I go, there's no such thing. They go, what? I go, if they're rebuilding it, it's not dystopian. Like that's happened before. Like I say it with zombies too. Like we've done it. Like we did it. We beat it. Everybody's always like, well, if there's a virus, it's like, yo, it happened. I was a kid when within 3 years, SARS, bird flu, and then like a bunch of years later, Ebola came back. Like we beat it every time. Us versus virus, we fucking win. Like I don't know what world you live in which zombies are there. And then people will start to be like, well, what if the virus? Like, it never has. There was AIDS. We won. We kicked its ass. We're doing great. It sucks, but we're doing great. And like, I have like a whole, you and I share similar sort of, social things coming from the other end of it where we see things as bleak, but, I'm hyper social. And so I'm always like, I wish I didn't want to have all the people around, but at the same time, I hate that world. And it's like, there's no such thing as a dystopia if you're building it. There's no such thing as a dystopia with technology. Okay. So that's another crazy thing. And then like post-apocalyptic, I get annoyed about like, yeah, there's this bleak view of the future, but like either we is or we ain't. That's the way it goes. I guarantee dodos were thinking like, hey, it's real bad for dodos right now. And then it wasn't because that's what you have. That's that instinct in us to think like, well, instinct's a bullshit word too, but it means nothing. A lot of people will say that as instinct. Like you can use instinct to do, like, what was the last topping you chose on a pizza?
The last topping is probably mushrooms.
Well, oh wow, that's like, oh, you must have known instinctually that like you were gonna like mushrooms. Works. I've heard with lesser bullshit on podcasts, but yeah, I don't know too much about Mass Effect, but I do know they are sort of pioneers, right? They're explorers.
Well, some of them are. I mean, the way that the core Mass Effect like universe is that there's a big space station in the middle of the galaxy called the Citadel. And basically races have to evolve to a point to where they can reach the Citadel. And that's kind of when they're welcomed into Citadel space, which is sort of like the Federation. And humans are in the Mass Effect universe, humans are the newest race to reach the Citadel. So they're kind of outsiders looking in. And so a lot of humans are pioneers and colonists because they're, establishing they're making their mark on the universe, so to speak. But beyond that, like, it's just, like all the technology is like, I mean, they've got like, kinetic armor that basically absorbs pretty much any impact, like you've got, like these excellent like shuttlecraft and everything that get you where you need to go, and their mass drives, which is basically their warp drives, basically take them from system to system. It's basically almost like imagine like this giant shotgun in space that you fly into, and then it just like flings you into the next star sector. Like,
cool.
It's some really neat stuff.
Pioneers are bad. Being a pioneer is bad. But like,
yeah, I wouldn't want to be on the fringes of space, because there's definitely bad stuff that happens to those humans. But I would say, like, if I'm in a planet kind of close to the Citadel, but not on the Citadel, but I can like visit there, like either for business or pleasure, like, yeah, that's a really good place to be, and,
that's a
I had meant to actually pick like an actual planet, but I haven't played the game in the series in a while, so I'm a little rusty on the actual planets. I used to be like real up on that stuff. But it's funny because, going back to like, that cynical look of like where we're at right now. It's like I always tell my girlfriend, we're never going to be able to build the Enterprise because we can't fix our roads. Like it takes like 3 years, to fix like 4 miles of highway. And it's like, but we want to build a starship. Like these two things don't match up.
Want to hear a really depressing fact? So I had some points on my license. I'm a good driver, but it was really not I wasn't doing anything dangerous, but I got the ticket. Once you get a ticket in New York City, there's no getting your way out of it. So I took driving school. Number one cause of accidents, just not knowing how to drive. Just not knowing what the rules of the road are. So
right.
Which is like, what? As amazing. Yeah, no. And we can't fix our roads. The winter is horrible. In terms of fun, of optimism, the one thing I haven't played Fallout, but the one thing I did notice is that, despite all the crazy technological changes from the nuclear world, the traffic cone is still orange and cone shaped in that universe, which is one of the weirdest things in all of games. Look, people don't even use cars. They're in robot machines and they're going around and they're stealing stuff. But cones, those are safe. All the cones are fine. In terms of science news too, like, I got a big problem with Tesla. Like, not a big way, but like a classic cult thing that science people will do is like, what a good cult leader will say is like, hey, in 50 years, we don't have, like, the gods haven't spoken to me now, or the sentient carpets from outer space, their phones broke because of the Great Darkness time. But if they were in contact with me, I could make flying carpets and we would all be fine. But until then, and I'll be able to do that in 10 years when the moon turns into a duvet. But until then, I have these limited powers. And like scientists often do that to make you feel optimistic about the future. And that I have an issue with, where they'll be like, oh, I don't have the answer. We have the answer in 10 years. But actually, right now, it's mostly just cars still and cell phones.
Right. Yeah. And, I think, and it's baby steps for sure. And there, I think there is a danger when you have like the cult of personality around like certain scientific figures, but I guess at least there is kind of a cult of personality around that instead of like your average like celebutante or something like, it almost feels like there's a shift more towards like the eggheads, where I think for a long time that wasn't the case.
For sure. Have you seen Pacific Rim?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
I just bought the special edition DVD, or managed to just watch it. And Guillermo del Toro did the audio commentary, and he points out, the reason that this movie is awesome to him is like, not like some of these monster movies get lost in monster action, but he's like, Charlie and that other guy, the scientist, are essential to the story. Like right. The bureaucrats, the criminals, the people, the citizens, the soldiers, like, they're all essential to winning. And like, that's super important to him in that movie. Like the idea that the movie could never be won without all of society's help. Like they lose otherwise. And like, that's a good thing to focus on in that movie, rather than it's not just an intergalactic space problem the scientists have discovered. Let's punch it.
That would have been a great tagline for the movie, though.
Yeah.
But no, you're spot on. And I think that's one of the things that I like about that Mass Effect universe also is that, you know, humanity ends up clinging together because they are now the human race, you know, in a sea of, you know, other species. And so they kind of like put a lot of their, you know, racial differences aside. And I think that's a really interesting, like, subplot to the series that isn't necessarily like in your face, but it's definitely something that's addressed. And there is one alien that talks to you and says like, yeah, you know, your species is really unique. Like you know, you have people that are different from different regions of your planet. You know, on my planet, we're all the same. You know, like if you come to a Solarian planet, you know what a Solarian is. If you go to a Krogan planet, you know what to expect from a Krogan. But, you know, humans, we don't know what to expect from you because you're all so different. Like your whole mindset is so individual. And, you know, but at the same time, they still have to pull together, you know, as a species to, you know, move into this new realm.
All right,
So.
Julian, stay on the line. I'm just going to I ran out of my drink because we were waiting for a while, but then I'm going to ask you 2 deep questions that I want to know the answer to. Give me 6 seconds. All right, I'm back. I'm going to make the gin and tonic at the table. Okay. The question I have, first, very deep question, Julian. Is it Ferenginar 5 or Ferenginar 9? I never remember.
Oh, that's out of my Star Trek depth.
Really? You're not a deep space guy?
I am, but not, it's been a long time since I watched it. Like,
okay.
I watched it as it aired and I have not gone back. I've been meaning to actually watch everything, like the whole, like basically all of Trek from beginning up until the end of Voyager because Enterprise doesn't exist.
It's not as bad. It's not so bad. Voyager's pretty good. And people say bad stuff about Voyager. Okay. My deep question is, cause on that is like, what's your take on and we're just I guess I'm going to say spoiler alert if you're just getting into nerd stuff and you haven't done your core work, right? What's your take on the ending of the Watchmen comic books in terms of that, in terms of like the species uniting? Like, cause that I always find that like, I always think the ending of Watchmen is so like, this is what he's saying. And then other people will tell me like, no, that's not really how I interpret it.
So here's like a controversial, opinion. I don't like the way that the Watchmen comic ends. I prefer the ending in the movie because I think it makes more sense to me. Like the weird, like engineered squid monster thing that's supposed to like unite humanity against a common threat to me is just kind of like out of left field. And it just doesn't play for me where there's already, in the movie, there's already this mounting, distrust of Dr. Manhattan. So it makes sense to set him up as you know, basically the reason that like, you know, the world almost ended. And so then people unite under, you know, trying to hope that never happens again. So that makes more sense to me.
I think it made sense in the movie. Like every time I look at that movie, I go, that is a great ending for the movie because it's like, you can't tell the other story in less than 7 hours. Yeah.
Right.
Fuck that. Like, I love Zack Snyder. I love Alan Moore, but fuck that.
I mean, you'd have to do like at that point you have to turn into a TV series on like HBO or something for it to, you know, be anywhere damn near effective. No, but I almost think that that's kind of like what it would take, right? It's either a disaster of such grand proportions that affects everybody equally that finally gets us to like, you know, quit our bullshit and actually start, you know, working together. Or it's like, oh, hey, everybody, aliens are real and they're actually above us right now and they're ready for us to join them, but they're not going to let us join them until, you know, we get our shit together and, you know, hold hands and kumbaya.
Now,
like,
but that's the first part of the ending. So I just want to straight spoil it because I don't care if people haven't read.
Oh, yeah.
But the second part of both of the endings is that Rorschach's journal gets published or is about to be published.
Yeah, that's true.
So in the end, you know, Discord evolves. And like the reason I love the Watchmen book ending, and especially after reading From Hell, is because, like, and again, I am not saying that one is better or worse because of the endings. I really want to stress that in everything I say. They're both great pieces of cinema. I stood up in the theater when that, like, the Bob Dylan song and that opening came on and all those, like, everybody looked like in the books, and I stood up and yelled, "Fuck yeah!" And, like, my girlfriend hit me, was like, "Sit down!" I didn't care though. So I love that movie. But in the books, the thing that I like that adds that cynical twist to it too is that, like, oh, even what gets us to get together, like, fake. It's not just faked by, like, Ozymandias. There's so many other powers at hand, which I think is what Alan Moore is. It's a crazier thing to believe. But, like, I think Alan Moore, when you read From Hell, you're like, he genuinely believes there are secrets. You will never know them. We will never know them. We will never be told. Like, we can never have a grasp on reality, which is a crazy way to see the universe. And sort of, I think your attitude is better. So it's just like, you should probably ignore the crazy lizard man with the beard. Like, don't listen to his ramblings and just focus on what's most likely real rather than his personal issues.
I mean, you know, I tend to agree that there are probably, I mean, that there's stuff that we will never know. And it makes me, you know, it frustrates me. Like, I'm kind of one of those people who I want to know the things. I'm also one of those people who, if I see like a restricted access in like a building or something, I'm like, you're not the boss of me. Like, I just want to get in there. I just want to be able to be in there. Like, I don't even care what's in there. I just don't want to be restricted by the restricted access door.
So what do I have to do to get back there, huh?
Yeah. It's like, give me all the clearance. Just give me all the clearance and then let me decide for myself, like, you know, what's real and what's not.
Julian, if you have a P.O. box, I'll send you the Silphco building elevator key card. It's fine. It's fine. You'll be able to get in everywhere. It'll be fine. It's cool.
It's an interesting, like, rabbit hole that I've kind of jumped into in the last few months with some of the more fringy podcasts that I've been listening to. And I'm not like an Alex Jones guy. Like, I'm not like, he's from Austin. It's to our great
Is
shame.
anyone that's like Alex Jones a guy? Is a good question to ask. If there's, are we counting those types of personalities in our species? Is a question.
Well, I mean, if he believes in lizard men and stuff, but he wouldn't be one of the lizard men. He's actually against the lizard men. So I don't know.
I love that nowadays I walk into a room and I say, no, I don't believe in aliens or ghosts. And most of the people in our generation go, what are you, nuts, you fucking moron? I'm like, what do you mean? No, like, they're not. That's a crazy thing to believe in.
I don't know. It's a really interesting, like, I was definitely, you know, and we're actually going to get into this in a special coming up because we're going to have on the host of the Nighttime podcast coming up soon. That's going to be a very different show. But, you know, I used to be like, oh no, none of that stuff is real. Like, whatever. Like, the world is just as we see it. But then it's like you start listening to stories and stuff and it's like, okay, there's some weird stuff going on that can't be explained. And I'm sure there's scientific reasons behind it all. You know, I just want to know those scientific reasons.
Oh, can I give them to you?
Like, sure.
Ask me what color the sky is.
What is the color? What color is the sky?
It's green and it's always covered in bird shit. Now that was very easy for me to lie to you, Julian. It took almost no effort. I broke a little bit of a sweat, but that's just because I'm a nerd, and so I just got a little angry and sweaty and yelly. But but other than that, that's mostly my explanation. But you can save that for your other episode.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you know, it's definitely not something that there's like new things that I've been looking into and stuff, and it's not something that I've ever pushed on anybody. You know, it's like, oh, you know, like, yeah, it's there's explanations for everything.
I like to, I mean, Alan Moore's, have you read From Hell? It's a chore, but have you read it?
I haven't.
No. It is like, he considers it his masterpiece, which if you like it or not, like, you should push through it. But like, that sort of colors that book, I think, in a way that I can never uncolor. And he himself, I don't know, do you know about Alan Moore's religious stuff?
No, actually. I all that I know of Alan Moore is that he's, you know, very eccentric in the comic book writing world, and he hates every adaptation of his work that's ever been done.
Well, he is, and we can talk about this later in Consumption Junction, because I have sort of a thing on this, but like, you know, his thinking is like, I did not write a movie. If you would like to make a movie, make your own fucking movie. Like, I made a comic book. I know how to make movies. Could have learned how to make movies. Like, I didn't make a movie. But, when it comes to From Hell, like, and religions, his point on religion is, he says, I'm a part of a cult that worships a giant lizard in space. I believe it is truly false, but at the same time, I 100% believe it is true. It's just a nutter, but it's a great point. It's like, that's what I do. I don't think it's real, but I believe it. Please don't insult it.
That's a lot to unpack.
It's too much.
I'll have to give that a shot. I'll have to give that a shot.
For people that don't know Alan Moore, he also will not be photographed for any of his books. Have you ever seen the pictures of him on the back?
No.
They are always taken in the parking lot of wherever he's working, and like, he has never posed for a picture. I know recently he sort of started to come out of the light and want a little more fame, but back in the hardcore days, he would never want like anyone to take a picture of him.
I know that I was super shocked when he appeared on an episode of The Simpsons, because I did not ever imagine that he would do something like that. We don't have anything from Patrick because it was kind of a last minute cancellation from him, but Angelo did, email with a pick for both Stage Select and Chrono Cross. And so he says, honestly, I think it would be Deus Ex. I suppose if I'm not the hero, then I don't really have to worry about turning myself into a super soldier and taking bullets in the face all the time, right? And the perks are I could basically have superpowers. Additionally, and this is a little dark, I suppose, it would remove one of my biggest fears, my body breaking down. He goes on to say, I already have joint trouble. My back, wrists, and neck are already somewhat problematic. And I had pretty extensive surgery on one of my feet a couple years ago. I worry that one day I just won't be able to do the things that I love, like play games or musical instruments or operate a keyboard. Does that world have problems? Absolutely, but I don't necessarily have to be involved in them, I suppose. And to me, the benefit of my defective parts being replaced with newer and possibly even better parts than what I originally had is just too tempting to me. I almost selected Deus Ex, but the newer Deus Ex games are, again, a lot more cynical in their world. Like, they've got all this great technology, and you would think that the augments that people are able to get would be a benefit to mankind, but of course, it's like the bleakest look at what, we could be if we had bionic arms or bionic eyes or, brain implants that allow us to, remember things better. And it's almost too bleak in the latest game. And it's kind of a bummer, but the technology is really cool. So I can't fault Angelo on that.
I haven't played Deus Ex, but my only question, I know generally like the gameplay of it, but I guess I don't know a lot of the lore. My only question is like, why I didn't choose Halo, which is a great answer as well, which is like, if you're not affected by the war, as we found out like later, like there's huge swaths of Covenant and other races, the Forerunners that were never affected by it until like it came to a head. Like,
right.
Like the reason I didn't choose that is because a society that needs super soldiers isn't that great. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
You need a super soldier. That's saying something. Is that the case in Deus Ex, or are they completely like Metal Gear Solid? Another reason, it's a spy mission. You're not really affected by it, right? But like, it's a universe where they need super spies made out of robot parts. Excuse me, magic robot parts.
Most of the augments in the Deus Ex universe are definitely for people who are like combat vets who lost a limb, or people that were born with deformities that they've been able to fix with augments, or, people who have a lot of money that are like, you know what, like my eyesight isn't as good as it used to be, so I'm gonna go ahead and get bionic eyes, just go ahead and like fix that, like for good. But then you do have like military applications, and that's where like the game comes into effect, where like the main character of the two most recent games was augmented against his will by the company that he worked for when he was like, mortally wounded.
Okay.
And of course you end up going up against like more like other augmented soldiers, but those are more like mercenaries who either did it to themselves to be more effective as a mercenary, or are part of like a larger organization that augmented them to further their own goals. So I'd say like the world at large, like it's not like, oh, like the whole police force is augmented because this is the way the world is now. It's like, no, it's more of like an elective thing, or like a medical treatment.
So it's more like Ghost in the Shell then in its lore.
I've only seen the movie.
Oh, Okay, we're not on watching things, but the series. Oh, they're so good and they're so controversial. Like that series. Okay, sorry. What were other people's answers?
Okay, let me see. I've got a couple here. We got a couple from Twitter, and then we've got some over at Pixelbit. Let me see. Yes. JD sent in, actually, and it's funny, Mike, because I thought for sure this was going to be yours. Let's see. JD says, he picks Pokemon. He says, in the Pokemon world, you can virtually live life on your own terms with Pokemon. And while it is extremely dangerous on paper, and I guess I don't know Pokemon because I just feel like it's not dangerous, but I guess they are wild animals. So, he goes on to say, the characters in the game seem to survive just fine. So that's what I have to go by.
Constantly an 11-year-old is fixing the basic functions of your city. Nope, dude, you're wrong. All I do in that game is being like, what's the person's name?
This is JD.
JD. Constantly, I'm an 11-year-old fixing power plants, dude. Like, I'm an 11-year-old with a Pikachu fixing a power plant. What are you thinking? No one's okay. Everyone's in danger. And then every once in a while, it's like, I got my hands on a Darkrai. Why don't I have it piss on this entire city? Everyone's in danger. It's Godzilla combined with a power outage. It's the worst game to live in. That's why I didn't choose it. It's so dangerous. I like furry animals, Julian. That's why I like Pokemon. I don't like power outages and getting ice beamed in the face by an angry Articuno.
Well, JD goes on to say, I can imagine having my Squirtle at my side, and probably try to get into battling. I'd imagine the Pokemon League would be, like traveling to a fighting game tournament, around the country, so it could be viable. And then he says, as long as no legendary Pokemon causes some...
They always do!
I'd be pretty chilled out in the Pokemon world.
Every 3 years, man, since 1999. What are you thinking?
I didn't realize Pokemon was so serious.
It's crazy serious.
I've seen a little bit of the anime, and it's like the worst that you've got is like Team Rocket, and that doesn't seem too bad. Like they're actually kind of cool. Well, so I thought it was all right.
The thing is like that's a commentary. Well, we can talk about why Pokemon's gone off the rails lately, but that's a symptom of the fact that like Ash is only catching these Joe criminals, and like in fact he realizes later in the series that like these Joe criminals have been keeping me safe from like the really bad guys, and like that the fact that Team Rocket thinks that this area is being is like in the mob. It's a mob, and so they think that like, oh, we're protecting this area, and eventually it becomes like, oh no, they're not doing a good job. And every once in a while, Ash gets his ass whooped by like a real mobster. Horrible universe.
All right, it's all fun and games until a Pikachu gets iced.
Yeah, the mangas are a little bit more bleak, but the games are always bleak as shit. They're always horrible. in XY, an entire, XY or maybe in Black White, I think an entire town gets iced over for like months. It's horrible. Horrible place to live. It's same with Link. Being Link isn't good. It's dangerous to go alone. Right? But I'm not alone. I'm with all the elves.
Well, Xrian doesn't agree with you, Mike, because his stage select pick is also the world from Pokemon Red and Blue. He says,
dude, no one was gonna give you a map except for the fact that Gary's sister wants to fuck you, and so she's like, oh, here, take a map. No one was gonna tell the 11-year-old how to get somewhere. Oh my god, it's such a bad choice. What's his logic? I'm sorry.
He says, well, initially I thought, some Gundam world, but that's a bit dangerous and I wouldn't necessarily be a pilot. Whereas in Pokemon, everyone from a toddler to a senior citizen can experience and enjoy Pokemon. Even better, the world in Red is pretty mundane. No Pokemon gods trying to destroy the Earth. Plus my favorite Pokemon, Jolteon, was in the original 150.
But that's not true either, that they're not trying to destroy the Earth. You constantly show up to towns and they're like, Team Rocket just blew everything up here. Like it's not true. It's just not true. There's a whole town that you show up to that is haunted and no one gets anything done until you, an 11-year-old, show up and free an ancient Cubone ghost. That that's the one where you fix the power plant. That's the first one you fix, and then a crazy military lieutenant makes you search through garbage. Like later on, they sort of paint this picture of like Red is a bad choice entirely, because later on they paint this picture of like, oh, the world of Pokemon is fun, but I always thought that was sort of a statement on the human spirit of like, whatever's going on, we enjoy our relationship with animals. And, talk about this, but like John Audubon is like, that first game is all about John Audubon. And like, I'm a big John Audubon fan. I think he's a badass naturist. And like, that was a huge inspiration for my life. And that's why I love Pokemon. I never wanted to live in the world of Pokemon. I wanted to see big animals and then do something else, which is why I could turn off my Game Boy.
Right. Well, Michael117 has a pick that I'm going to disagree with. He says the game universe I would want to live in would be Red Dead Redemption.
The fuck is wrong with you, Michael?
But he says I would either be a train engineer or run a small farm in that world, and I could probably avoid most of the violence that occurs between John Marston, the government, and bandits.
Says every
Not
train
true. It's the Old
engineer.
West. Luckily, there are no aliens, disease, dystopia, and no apocalypse in Red Dead. There's so much disease. It's the Wild West. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm sorry, Michael. That is like I hate the Wild West. Like, I don't like Westerns. Like, it is like one of my least favorite eras to look at when we're talking about history. Like, it does nothing for me, which is why I didn't finish Red Dead. Cause I'm just like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to be a cowboy.
That's why I love Deadwood, because like everyone is constantly like limping from some sore they have on their hip. Like it's amazing. Like, some prostitute gave me this and I'm gonna throw up all day. It's fine. Yeah, another bad choice. But I mean, why not just choose like one of the Call of Duties that takes place in the future if you're gonna choose Red Dead? Why not choose a right? Some of the Call of Duties are more like futuristic, right? Like, why not choose one of those where like our military is just better? Why go back in time where there's like more racism, online sword fighting, and like why would you do that? Why wouldn't you go to a chlamydia-free era?
Well, and it's interesting too, and like I've thought about this recently, where it's like a lot of times like we use the term like world in video games almost incorrectly, I think, because like in the sense of like Red Dead, like they talk about the world of Red Dead Redemption, but it's like, well, that world is just our world, but in the past. Like it's not really, it's not Hyrule. It's not, the Mushroom Kingdom. It's not, something like that. So I find that interesting. And, and so to the way that video gamers use the term world, like, I mean, he's correct, but yeah, like to me, it's like, well, it's just Earth, like, I guess that's more of like what era would you like to time travel back to? And that, again, that's not one that I would. But,
it has all the things that you and I have said are bad. Pioneers, mass violence, and disease. Like, that's everybody else's answers were avoiding those things. And the Wild West was all, plus like, a big myth about the Wild West I have a problem with is like this idea that there were good gunslingers. Hey man, no one knew how to make guns. So if you got a gun that worked, you were a good gunslinger. Like, for the most part, like there's this great movie. Oh, I always forget the year. I think it's called Winston 1837. And like, it's this idea that the Winston Rifle Company, would make one perfect gun a year. And it's like an awesome, like Western movie where it's like this idea that like guns are like, it starts with this great speech. It's like it's this contest to win this gun. And they're like, this rifle is perfect. They make one a year that's perfect. No, all the other ones are garbage. And it's this like, it's essentially a kung fu story where it's like they're fighting over the perfect sword. And like this myth that violence, I mean, I know people say the opposite. People often say it wasn't as violent, there wasn't as many gunfights, but there still were some. So like, fuck off. Like it doesn't happen that often.
Well, and like I remember that monologue in Hateful Eight where they talk about, frontier justice versus actual justice. But that, frontier justice was still pretty valid at that point, and that movie takes place towards the end of like the Wild West era. So it's like, yeah, I don't want to live in a world where frontier justice is a thing that can happen, where like if someone's pissed off at me, they can just go ahead and hang me in their, by their tool shed or something.
Yeah, I urge all people that give Wild West answers to anything to learn about the true story of Wyatt Earp, which is one of the most fascinating stories about gunslingers, where Wyatt Earp is one of the few cowboys to see the movie about himself get made. And it's a great story about the fact that like he was this man on the edge of needing justice in a lawless time and like just being a criminal and a jerk. It's a great answer. Yeah, no, I would never choose the Wild West. What else we got?
So you'll appreciate this one. Catherine Hauser, fellow Pixelbit writer, says, I'm not sure where I would want to live, but I can certainly tell you that I would never want to live in Majora's Mask. You're living your life peacefully. And then all of a sudden you have to relive the final 3 days of the world over and over, while you wait for this kid to play with masks and jack time and space around with an ocarina. No, thank you.
But again, do you know about it? No. At the end of the day, and this is why I chose Hyrule, Catherine, is like, at the end of the day, they never knew it happened. At the end of the day, Hyrule is peaceful. And like, I have a different interpretation on the Hyrule universe where I sort of say that it might have never happened. That Link is just what I think Link is this is my stupid fan theory. So 15 second forward because it's dumb and without any merit. I think Link is essentially the link between the forces of the universe. He's a prophet. The forces of the universe, which are the Triforce, and the link, like it's a very obvious thing to fixing those problems. That Link is actually a glitch. Like Link never even exists. There's all this evidence that he never really exists. He's sort of a boring kid. People say like he's unmemorable, even though he's a hero. And like, I think that these problems never really happen. Because Link doesn't always remember the effects of you doing day 1 and day 2 and slowing down time. Like they're not seen because there's a chance it never happens ever.
Yeah. Yeah. To your point, like I would imagine, cause I haven't finished the game, but I would imagine that once Link saves the day in Majora's Mask, like those, the 4th day just happens and then they continue to live out their lives like nothing happened. So
I don't remember the exact ending, but I am also wrong in saying I remember the ending of that game.
Last but not least, we have a fellow Pixelbit writer, Casey, who, and I'm surprised on this one. His pick is, The World of Psychonauts. He says, if I'm not the hero anywhere, I'd have to figure out what I want to do as my normal person job. And I'm betting a psychiatrist in this world will be pretty fun and interesting job. Instead of talking out problems, I just go inside someone's mind and explore their inner thoughts until I figure out how to fix everything. Feels like that would be a pretty fun and rewarding job.
I'd be remiss to not include the people that when I tweeted it out also answered.
Oh yeah. You got a couple, right?
Yeah. I was really happy to see that. We got some engagement. Hold on. I'm trying to scroll down to our first answer. No logic given on either of the answers, but, no, one person does give logic. Matthew Barnett, which is at mbarnett NRTH91, says Elder Scrolls for where he lived. No logic on that, but Elder Scrolls is his answer. What do you think of that choice?
As not a fan of like Bethesda's RPGs, like I feel that it's kind of just like a dirty place to live. But again, if you're not the hero, like probably fine.
No, because I'm the hero a lot of those times, and I try and stab every NPC. Good answer if you're not playing in my version of Elder Scrolls, where I don't care about. Like my thing is like I like RPGs for the RP. I don't care about the G. Right. I like to role play. I like to be a guy. I choose a guy. As soon as I make my character, I'm a guy and I get in there and I'm him. And I love being evil in games. So I show up and my favorite thing in games to do, like RPG games where it's open world, is like, I'm like, hey, I'm the badass wizard. I'm going to show up to your town and I'm going to make it a ghost town so that when people come back here, they're like, where are all these people? It's like, oh, that guy came through because he's an evil mother. And then, Gaijin Harry Potter at WC Bolt answered, he specifically answered sort of, I couldn't include enough words to explain it, but he said, if he's a player, Final Fantasy VIII, and if he's an NPC, I think this is brilliant. Street Fighter 2 Guile stage, which is just where you watch Guile fight on the docks. And I would, that one, that's a really good answer.
Do you get to hear Guile's theme song all the time? Because if you do, then I'm on board.
If you're me, you're always hearing Guile's theme song in your head.
Okay. just as a matter of course. Yeah, it's interesting though, like I've got to call a little BS on if he was a PC, because of all the Final Fantasies, that's the one where you'd want to be one of the characters, the one that has the worst characters of the entire franchise. I mean, whatever floats your boat, but that would not be my choice as a huge Final Fantasy fan.
What's so weird is I love RPGs, and like this show has made me want to do nothing other than play Final Fantasy, because it's like the most legit of RPGs and like goes all the way back to like the Game Boy, which is far and away my favorite system. And like, but I'm right up to in my binging, where you guys review the one that came out for the phone. So is it worth it for me to do? Is it gonna be just like a quick yes or no? Is it worth it for me to get it on the phone?
They play fine on the phone. Cause the thing about those old Final Fantasy games on the phone is that, it's since they're turn-based and, like it's just like up, down, left, right, you don't have to worry about being super precise with like the touch controls.
Well, I'm not talking about the emulator. They released that one. Isn't 15 just for the phone? It's mobile.
No. There's a whole, like, they're doing a whole cross-media thing with 15.
Okay.
So there's a mobile game that just came out, which is actually based on one of Square's original, like, one of their games before Final Fantasy.
Whoa.
It was called King's Road on the NES.
Bad name.
And so apparently, like, this is a game that the characters of Final Fantasy 15 play on their phones. And you can download that.
Yes. Okay. That was my number one question about all these, stage selects, which is like, there's a lot of answers in the stage selects where I'm like, oh, the game Ender plays in Ender's Game is my answer to a huge amount of them. So I've always wondered whether fictional games. So this is a fictional game. So if I like this, I can choose the Final Fantasy mobile version for some of the stage selects. And that sort of breaks the boundary.
Sure.
I'll download it. I'm worried it's going to get me addicted. I'm going to have to play it, and I'm going to buy like a $90 cartridge for my Game Boy Color.
Well, I mean, the Final Fantasy mobile games are definitely different beast. I'm actually of the mindset that they're really well made. A lot of people give them a lot of crap for like the free-to-play models and stuff, but I think that for free-to-play games, like, they do a good job. But if we're talking about like the classic Final Fantasies, those work fine on mobile as well, but I'm definitely I'm a controller guy. So,
yeah,
I definitely feel that if you can experience those games, with a controller in hand, that's the way to do it. I know our friends over the Square Roots podcast, they're an RPG podcast, and they just finished Secret of Mana, which was a Super Nintendo game, and two of the four members were actually playing it on iOS, and they were like, yeah, this isn't great. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're playing it on a touch controller. Like, it's not the way it's supposed to be.
Oh, I'm anti-emulators. I would never play an emulator. I would never do it. I think it's so.
Oh, well, these were, it's an official game purchased from, like Square has released a lot of their classic games on mobile. It's just your mileage may vary on if you like playing them with that virtual joystick, basically.
Square Enix might be the most forward-thinking, least successful company in the history of companies. Like, that's an amazing forward-thinking idea. And yet at the same time, it should, like, why didn't I know that? Like, that should be they should be rolling in cash. And like,
well, the problem is, and the reason you probably don't know about it, is because when they release their classic games on iOS, they're $15 to $20 instead of like the $2 to $5 that most people are used to paying on that format.
I love that. That's amazing. When I tell someone like, I'll buy an app for something to make my life easier, and I'll be like, yeah, it's $20. Like, $20? I'm like, why are you saying $20 like it's a big deal? Every other purchase in your life, you would not even think about that just because it's on your phone. Like, nothing. I haven't, like, it's the flip side. When you tell me something costs $2, it's like, I've never bought anything for $2. I cannot think of a lighter. Maybe some lighters, a bad lighter. I've bought a bad lighter for less than $2. That's weird that you buy anything for $1. Like, that's weird to me. On-demand movies still cost $6.
Yeah, it's a weird topsy-turvy world in the app market, but yeah, and I mean, to me, it's like, yeah, those games are still great. I mean, and that's still a good price because, like you said, $90 cartridges. Like, you saw my collection, like, it's behind me. Like,
I see it, yeah.
That stuff is not cheap anymore.
Have you ever posted pictures of it? It's real. It's dope.
I've posted some here and there. I should probably post like the whole thing, because I think I've just done like little snippets of it. But
I would literally, like, I got to sign up for Pixelbit like this week so I can hang out on that website. But like, damn, I would probably just like look at a Tumblr of all your games. Like, and it probably would take you like a year or two to actually like doing a post a day, put them all up. Like, oh man.
It's a lot of stuff. And the funny thing is that like when you're talking about like game collectors, like I'm on the lower end of of the spectrum, because like there's people that could fill this room, and this is not a small room. It's a huge room. It's actually the master bedroom of this apartment. It's just, I needed more room for my games than I did to sleep in.
You still have the dignity of putting things in shelves, though. You know, I've gotten to the point with my books where there are bags in attics and duffel bags. Clothes? No, unlife-giving books.
I think that's as good a place as any to end this segment of Stage Select. I'm not going to announce the next Stage Select because we're going to have a weird schedule for the month of October, guys. We're going to be back next week with with the return of Angelo Grant. And it's just going to be an all consumption episode where we just kind of catch up with him. He's missed 2 episodes now. So that's been 6 weeks since any of us have talked to him. And so he'll have a lot to talk about. And then he will actually be selecting the Stage Select for our big episode 100, which will be out, in time for Halloween. So it's episode 100, but it's also our annual Halloween Havoc edition. So that'll be lots of fun. And hopefully Angela is picking something spooky for Stage Select. Can't believe I just did that. So yeah, that'll do it for here. I think we'll roll on into some Consumption Junction. So Mike, you have proven to me, because, we've interacted on Twitter a little bit, and then we did 30 podcasts I'm not doing, but that was a short show. It's about, like a 35, 40 minute show. So, but you've proven to me now that, like, you are very well rounded in your nerddom.
Thank you. That's literally all I want. That's all I care about is being legit. So thank you. That's it. It's a world out there where I get in arguments a lot with people about nerd stuff, and it's like, get out of here, tourist. Like, I know you're just visiting. I know you just saw those movies in the theater. Get out. We don't like your kind around here.
I don't understand that mentality at all. I've never been that. Well, let me take that back. I understand part of the mentality in the sense that it's kind of cool to be a nerd and a geek now, but if you grew up that way, especially if you're of a certain age where it was not cool and you were, made fun of and excluded because of it. And then all of a sudden, like, those people who made fun of you are now saying, oh yeah, like, I'm a nerd, I'm a geek, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I can see that putting some people off, but the only time that I can get behind that is if you know that person and they actually did call you out on your nerdiness when you were younger and now they've come the other way. But even then, there's no, like, this is your point of entry for this stuff. It's like everybody has their own starting point. So it's like, if you became a fan of Marvel Comics because you watched Iron Man the movie, awesome. Like, I'm so happy to have you because, like, the comic book readership has been down. So that's great. If your first video game was Angry Birds on, the iPhone, but then you're now like a hardcore Overwatch player, cool.
That's the word, though. Hardcore. That's the word. If you're hardcore, I don't care where you started. I don't care where you came from. But it's when I'm in a bar, Julian, I hear 2 idiots, usually dudes, like, being like, oh, Batman's not a superhero. He's like just a regular hero with all this stuff. It's like, shut up, I'm gonna strangle you. He's obviously a superhero. When people send me articles where they're like, oh, even if Batman had a polycarbon fiber cape, he couldn't have landed. I was like, it doesn't matter what he can or can't do. He's Batman. He can do it. It doesn't matter what you think. You can't do it because you're not Batman. And it's like those people, the people that on this show, you guys are guilty of it, where the idea that there's a lot of Christopher Nolan jargon. Batman murders people a lot in those comic books. I don't know what comic books you're reading. I've seen Batman ace dudes. He just he bloodies him up. I don't know what you think is going to happen when you punch a guy in the head 1,000 times with a gauntlet and leave him dying in an alley. He's not going to do, oh, we found Johnny, our other criminal friend. Let's take him to the hospital right away. What I do in New York City when I see people bleeding on the street is mostly nothing. So
in defense of that point, like, I've always felt in the cause I haven't seen him kill anybody in the comics on purpose. Like, there's been accidents, but my feeling has always been that he's such a, proficient fighter, and he's so well versed in combat that he's able to do, like, maximum efficiency, but, you know, but basically damage people in a way that puts them down without necessarily, like, crippling them. Like, I feel that that's something that he would know how to do. Now, you look at Batman in, like, the Arkham games, and no, those guys are either not getting up again, or they're in traction for the rest of their lives, because the stuff that Batman does in those video games is, like, a different level of brutal, where I always felt that, you know, like, I forget what it was, like, some thing with martial arts where it was gentle fist. Like, that was the thing where it's like, they were hitting you, and it was doing damage, but it was done in such a way to where, like, you would be fine, you know, a week, you know, like later on, like, you know, you would be able to get up from it eventually. Like, you're not going to be, like, permanently disabled from this. So that's kind of my feeling about it. And, but to be fair, that's my headcanon. Like, I've never actually necessarily read anything that says that Batman does this. It's just something, especially because, like, he pounds on, like, Two-Face and the Joker so often, and then they're, you know,
well,
they're back.
I think the important thing is that Batman, the idea that he doesn't kill people is the thing that I get upset when people bring that up is, like, it's not that he doesn't kill people. Look at the main villains for Batman. You've got your nut jobs that are ruining society. That's one half of them. Those are usually the more popular ones that people know, which are your Two-Faces, your Penguins, your Jokers. The people that are just, they represent what's wrong with society. But then when you look at the other enemies, the big point is that more focuses on the murder of the Waynes, which is that Batman does not believe assassination works. And that's an important thing to distinguish, is that Batman recognizes crime as a societal disease. Slade, you know, Killer Croc. These are, the League of Assassins. Who's the other one? The one that kills him. The owls. And, like,
the Court of Owls.
The Court of Owls. And it's like, that is a bunch of people that focus on the idea that you can overtake someone using assassination. And, you know, Slade specifically, or Deathshot as people know him. It's, Batman never believes that you can kill someone, that killing them doesn't solve the issue. And that he often has to restrain himself in saying, what's the endemic problem here? That's the commentary. He kills people a lot, though. In fact, in those movies where Batman is constantly saying, I don't kill people, he kills someone every movie. Like, just remember that. Like, in that whole movie where he's like, I don't kill people, the way to solve the problem every single time is to kill someone. He kills Ra's al Ghul, he kills Harvey Dent, he kills Bane. Okay? So.
Well, and I do have problems with all the Batman movies because of
course,
that. Because
you wouldn't be a nerd,
you know,
and I would shut the show off if you didn't say otherwise.
Well, you know, like Batman Begins, like, I always go back to the car chase with the cops, like when he first uses the tumbler, and it's like, all right, you have taken out so many cops at this point, and, like, there's nothing to, I mean, I know that, like, they say, like, some offhand comment that, like, the cops are dirty in that town, but not all of them are. So, like, that's always a thing with me. Like, you know, maybe I've read, maybe the Batman, yeah, and maybe the Batman comics that I've read have been more of the, like, ideal Batman, and that I'm just like, I've got gaps where maybe, like, he goes to that place more often and stuff. But I guess that's and my thing too is, like, you know, cause I think what we're talking around is, like, the Batman v Superman version, where it's like, that one, he's not even pretending, you know, it's like, he's got machine guns on the Batplane, and, like, he's just, like, firing them at people, and he aims like a thug's, like, AK-47 to spray the room, you know, and it's like, no, that's not the Batman that I know. Like, there may be a version of Batman somewhere that is that, but not the one that I
see it a totally different way. And I got in a big argument with my cousin about this. And my thing is, like, if you start to do that, like, I'm into that. I'm into having that discussion. But at the same time, it's not a religion. And so for me, it's like, everyone's going to take this archetype, this new type of character. The man, he is the essence. Batman is possibly the only Ubermensch other than Iron Man and Batman, are possibly the only real Ubermensches in the comic book universe in the mainstream. Obviously, there's lots of people that read comic books. But their point is that with skill, with determination, with concentration on your ideals, you can ascend from man and become Superman. And for me, that's an interpretation that on both of those characters, that it's like, hey, you know, like, however they get there, but to focus on this idea that he doesn't kill people, he aces people all the time, and who cares? You know, that Batman, Superman, that Dark Knight universe, I like that one a lot because he does kill people and he does know that that's what you have to do. He's killing people left and right in those comic books. And I especially like Batman Year 100, where he plays off of that. Batman has always played off of the rumor, like Green Hornet. He's always played off of the rumor that he's a ruthless killer. He's never tried to make that public. He would never make it public. To Joker is probably my big issue with my real only issue with the Dark Knight series, which is that to tell Joker things about himself is Batman at his weakest. That is when Batman is weak, is to admit things to his best friend, who the Joker is. And, you know, like, he would never do that.
That's actually a really good point, because I do think that, like, the people who know that that's his policy to not kill are the big supervillains that he deals with on a regular basis. But their subordinates, they still buy into the myth that Batman is a cold-blooded killer, and so they're afraid of him. And he plays up on that. Like, there was one, I forget what it was. I think it was around the time of, Bruce Wayne Murderer / Bruce Wayne Fugitive, where
that's a good series.
Hey,
go pick up. That's another comic book that people don't know. Like, and that's one that easily could have been made as that series. Go pick up Fugitive. It's a long series. It's good.
Yeah, it's very good. And there's a part where I think Robin, for some reason he's knocked out or something, and he's waking up and he's hearing Batman interrogate just some random street criminal. But, like, the stuff that Batman is saying is literally, like, you know, basically trying to scare the crap out of the guy, and basically saying in no uncertain words that if he doesn't tell him what he wants, he's going to kill him. You know, and he's not going to, but the guy doesn't know that. And yeah, I think that's a good aspect of the character. And, you know, if we're talking about, like, the version of, like, the Ben Affleck version of this Batman, like, if they want to have a Batman that is all about killing, like, if they want to make, like, a Punisher Batman, like, I'm open to that. Like, I don't hold the character in this, like, hallowed, like, position, but I would like them to address it where it's like, either he's always been this way and they say that, or it's a change and the people who know him are commenting on it. They don't really do either of those in that movie. Yeah. And that was kind of
to pretend that there's a connection to any other movie with Batman versus Superman is a farce. And I'm very suspicious when DC says it. But for me, I've been reading Batman for years, and the last thing I want Batman to turn into is Captain America. And the only reason people like Captain America, and you know this as a comic book nerd, is because someone said, everything needs to change about Captain America because she's the worst. Pretty much 1983 through 1997, here is every Captain America book. I'm in the jungle. Cocaine's the worst. Kapunch, kapunch, kapunch. End of Captain America. Like, they're bad comic books. But someone came along and was like, this needs to change. And that's why that character is great. And that's why you get the Winter Soldier comic books and some of the more revolutionary things. But, like, for me, as a Batman fan, it's like, listen, I've got the Batmans I love. At this point, if someone wants to change it, like, great. Do something. Like, I'm willing to see that interpretation. There is no holy Batman for me. Like, even in Year 100, which is one of my favorites, where he wears fake teeth. He wears fake jaw to make him look like he's a literal monster, bringing back that myth. And but in other ways, he's more bare bones. He has sweatpants on, which I love, you know, which was in an era gone by, the athletic wear. And but it's in the future. I like to see people change it. I mean, Red Sun, which is, as a comic book person, I'm not allowed to spoil because it is truly one of the joys of comic books, but you know, that's a great book to me. Same with, like, Superman is like, It's a Bird. Have you ever read that?
No.
Great comic book.
I haven't.
And it's not about Superman, but it's a great comic book. It's about a guy whose mom has Huntington's chorea while he's writing his first Superman. And it's about the idea of the invincible body versus the inevitability that he will die from a degenerative disease. And the idea that an official DC Superman comic is about someone struggling with Huntington's chorea would never happen in this universe where we listen to every comic book nerd. Even being one, don't listen to me. It's not my thing. Again, we're on different teams. the person creating it and the person absorbing it they're on different teams. And at the best, it's a union. But at the worst, it's this combat we see now where people do respond to Age of Ultron and like it. You know, that's bad for the movie. But at the same time, if you respond in a way that is like, I want this specific thing, it's like, it can't be that because it has to be what the artist thinks it is. Like, here are bad fan service movies like Harry Potter 7, Hunger Games, unwatchable movies unless you've read the books. So,
right, yeah.
So we have to be on different teams, and you can't expect them to do it perfectly because otherwise it's nothing. Otherwise you make the movie. You do it. Or don't go anywhere. Just sit at home like I used to do for years and imagine a world where there's 19 Marvel movies coming out in the next 10 years.
I do like the idea of 19 Marvel movies coming out in the next 10 years, though.
Pretty bonkers. King Lear. There's a madman in that castle cranking out. I don't know what's going on. Talk about secret governments. I don't know what's going on there that they're like, good idea. Good idea. Good idea.
Well, there has yet to be a Marvel movie that I haven't liked. There are movies that are at the bottom of the list because there has to be a bottom. But I love them all. So.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. Like, cause I haven't said this on air. You know, I have this pent up nerd rage, but like, I don't go anymore. Like, Marvel's lost it.
Really?
Yeah, Marvel lost it. Age of Ultron. I mean, that movie for me, someone pointed out after I went and I was like, I didn't really like it. And I thought I wasn't drunk enough to watch it. And they were like, you weren't, it's a bad movie. And then they pointed out, like, Ultron is not a viscera character. The idea of that movie being ended as punching Ultron is weird. Like, and that's why I didn't even get, like, cause I had never read any comics with Ultron in it. And they were like, the point of Ultron is that he never dies. Like, you guys have talked about that on the show, is that Ultron never dies. And like, for me, I was like, I don't really get him as a villain. He's like, well, it's supposed to be more insidious. It's supposed to be more like the beginning of that movie where he's inside, Stark Industries.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, right. Like, it's supposed to be the unseen everywhere Illuminati villain. It's not supposed to be he's everywhere and everything and in every piece of technology. Let's punch them all. Like, it's supposed to be, how can we outsmart the smartest thing in the universe?
Well, and you know, I'm speaking from ignorance here because I haven't read much with Ultron, but he's both because he definitely is like, you know, here's the big thing that you have to punch, and he's always different. Like, he's always iterating on himself. And I think at one point he was actually made of adamantium, which is like, you know, the strongest metal in the Marvel universe, you know. So, like, there's that aspect of it. But my thinking is that he's not dead at the end of that movie because
that was your theory. I heard that. That was brilliant. That actually made it better.
Yeah, it happens off screen. So, and Vision is the one confronting him. And I feel that Vision has so much respect for the AI part of Ultron. And he says it himself, you know, that he doesn't want to destroy Ultron. I don't think that he does. I think that Ultron is locked away somewhere because Ultron always gets locked away somewhere. And then he gets out into the technology world and then rebuilds. And then he's a threat again.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see Ultron being a Brainiac type character in the Marvel universe where he is good for now and that Superman cannot kill Brainiac because he's his only brother. And so I would not be shocked at all to see Ultron back in the next movie as a sidekick, as a weak sidekick, which is perfect for the way James Spader played him, which is perfect for this snotty guy. He becomes a Niles Crane rather than this snotty villain that he's the bumbling sidekick that is too smart for his own good. Like, that would not shock me at all. And that would be a great move. But that movie, on that same episode, I did have a theorem for you as to why Fantastic Four never works before we actually get to what the hell I'm watching. My theory that I've been dying to tell you is, here is Tony Stark in those movies. He's a guy with a big tower who's publicly a superhero with a lot of money who is snarky in the face of villains. That is Mr. Fantastic. That's not Tony Stark. So the reason Fantastic Four has never worked is because they use the personality on Tony Stark and they can't use it again. So cause that guy's not Tony Stark. Tony Stark's like a horrible guy that like doesn't talk to anyone, is a jerk. But then like all of a sudden he's this enigmatic dude who's like snarky and fun and like has a public tower. Wait, Stark Towers? Like, what is that? Fantastic Four's headquarters? That's a thing. You know, like.
Well, now, as a person who first read Iron Man, like that was my introduction to comic books, I will say that, so the Tony Stark you're talking about, like the jerk, like the terrible Tony Stark,
yeah,
that is like the Civil War and on Tony Stark, because the way that they wrote him during the Civil War comic and then past that was not the Tony Stark that I grew up with.
Which admittedly, like Scout's honor, that is really when I got into Tony Stark.
Right. So the Tony Stark that I grew up with, he wasn't Robert Downey Jr., because definitely the comic books have taken Robert Downey Jr.'s performance and made that what Tony Stark is in the comics today. But the Tony Stark that I grew up with was definitely like the millionaire playboy industrialist who went out on the town, womanized, loved his alcohol, you know, but then went into his lab and created amazing things and was like really upfront about it. But also people didn't know that he was Iron Man. Like Iron Man was his bodyguard.
Right. So that persona, that nice guy with a fun company that everybody loves, being an open superhero in a tower, that was Fantastic Four to me. That was because I only read the original Fantastic Fours with Kirby, and like that is who he was. They always showed the model of his tower. It was always open. This is where the Fantastic Four lived. They would always point up and see that's the Fantastic Four plane, as opposed to Tony Stark, who I saw living a dual life.
Right.
You know, like that, they took that personality and now you can never use it on anyone else.
Now, friend of the show, John Golson, he's like the biggest Fantastic Four fan that I know. And I think his feeling of why those movies don't work is because they don't really get the core concept of the comics, which is that at the end of the day, it's kind of like, it's super science and it's super science fiction. And he's always said that it would make a wonderful Star Trek style television show where every episode is like an hour-long adventure. They're not connected. You know, it's the Fantastic Four doing crazy adventures. In one episode they're in space, in another one they're in a different, like, dimension. In another one they're dealing with the Mole Man. And then you have Dr. Doom come up and he's in like 2 episodes for a season. But then that's it. You know, like, he's not like the big villain for like all 26 episodes of the season. It's like, you know, he's an important dude, but you don't see him all the time.
I think that to add to John Colson's point, who is great on the show, I will add another term that he probably would have used had you given him 6 hours to talk about Fantastic Four, is that it is a classic Western posse movie. It cannot be done in a cinematic way because cinema is meant to be grand and start and end. And we're not used to the posse movies of John Wayne, where every Fantastic Four movie starts with them hanging out. Same with the X-Men, is that it starts with them just hanging out. They're in the tower. They're doing stuff. They have their little, Reed has his little experiments and Johnny's calling some girl. And it's like, we don't have those types of movies anymore. Really, the Western in that way is dead. So if you don't have a posse movie where, we're just hanging out and we're the sheriffs on the edge of town, it's hard to do. It's easier as a series because it's like, you need filler episodes. You need that episode where Goku learns how to drive. These things are necessary. Why don't they ever use that license? That's my question. It's like both Piccolo and Goku can drive, and they never there's never an episode after that where they have to. Like, that would have been great.
It's like, really glad that we did that, 200 episodes ago. It came in really handy now because for some reason we can't fly.
So I love the driving lesson episode, and I think that all Dragon Ball Z fans hate it, and I get so much flack for liking it, and it's the most famous filler episode of all time, but I love it.
But it's fun. It's a fun episode, and that's the thing. And to your point, my favorite issues of the X-Men, especially around the Chris Claremont days, were the issues where, you know what, we're just gonna play baseball today.
Yes!
We had a really rough adventure, and now it's time to just go ahead and come back to the mansion and relax for an issue. And those are the best issues because they develop the characters in a non-combat setting, and you need that.
Same with Evolution, same with the movies from the early 2000s. Those movies, I think people forget this because time makes nerds of us all. Is that those movies at the time were so cool, and they were the competition to Hogwarts, which was like, there is this place where you as a weirdo can be safe. And that is always, and that's the message that I think modern X-Men movies are losing a little bit, which is like, I like Hogwarts and I like the Xavier Academy because I was a little weirdo and I wanted a place where I could show people my forked tongue without getting beat up. Like, that's what I want. I don't want to be getting hunted by robots.
Yeah! Eagle rapping in the sex party! Gotta catch 'em all! Spill my ball! Yo, what up, bitch? I'ma tell you a tale about how Ash Ketchum got his ass sent to jail. Beat the Elite Four, won the tournament war, but he just couldn't get the same rushes before. Fat and depressed, his life had gone south, so he turned to Pikachu and then he punched him in the mouth. He felt so alive, he felt so real. He beat all his Pokemon with his fist of Registeel. He got arrested for domestic violence. It was a crazy motherfucking cat turn of events. He said the biggest bruises happened on the stairs when he fell. The cops agreed, bullshit, and threw that bitch in a cell. Rock on! This is a fucked up tale of Pokemon gone wrong.
So I've been watching.
That was the most epic comic book like discussion that we've had on Earth Without Pants in a very long time. So I appreciate that.
So tense. It would go down in the history of the Roman forums. It's just, well, yes, but consider this, Michael. My big thing that I watched recently, went through all of it, really amazing, and brings up a lot of issues from the show, is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell from BBC. That's now entirely on Netflix. Such a good. It was in a book. I don't compare books and movies unless one is bad. It's a really great series. The effects are amazing. As I call them, it doesn't start with like the Warcraft movies with cock lasers, which is what I call it when it's just like, I have magic. Here we go, shooting magic at each other. It very subtly and amazingly using effects that are really like for nowadays, like for modern technology, can be done so well and so like perfect. A lot of people try and do effects they can't do, and those get less timeless. I think that this is a timeless series, and that they slowly get you into the effects, and the story itself is a brilliant way to think about magic. It's all on Netflix. I went through it in 2 days. I honestly ripped through it. I took a day off to just watch most of it, and then did it at like when I came home from work. It is just so good.
So I don't think I've heard about this one. What is it like?
So it was a book. It was just one book, not a series. And it is I don't know anything about the book, but I was again yelled at by my cousin about not reading the book, into which I said, it doesn't matter. The TV series is a 8 or 6 part series. I can't tell you right now, but it's with a meeting of magicians, this like magicians guild, and these people are talking about, these just ramblings of magic, very classic British society sort of thing, big medals and ribbons and things like that. And sort of this fictional, I think it's sort of modeled after the Knights of the Realm, sort of these meetings, these other weird societies that exist in Britain that are similar to our Elks clubs and things like that. But in like the 1800s, and this guy walks in and goes, why is it that we only talk about magic in England as this fictional thing from the time of Arthur? Why isn't anyone practicing magic? And so from this great speech, which is sort of grounded in reality, even though it's a fictional society of magicians. So it starts with this really grounded reality thing, which is like sort of believable. If you've ever seen like the movie 4, it's sort of that same vibe where you're like, is this like a real thing that existed, or is it fake? And this is like, they're like, no one can do practical magic. And then that's like the theme of the show is can you do practical magic? I don't want to ruin anything from it because it goes into issues of race, which I think is amazing. They have black characters in the 1800s of England, and it turns that on its head. It goes into the whole thing of magic and what we consider it to be, and it gets so epic in a really real way. It's just a great series.
I'm gonna have to add that to the list. That sounds really cool. I also like the fact that it's basically like my favorite line. Well, one of my favorite lines from the first Kick-Ass movie, where he's just like, why didn't anybody try to be a superhero before? And he's just like very casually, like just sipping on his coffee. And it's like, yeah, why doesn't anybody do magic? Why doesn't anybody do real magic? Let's just do real magic. Let's try that. So,
and it's great. Like, what's cool about it too, that I think the Harry Potter books do really well, that this TV show does really well, which I've never really seen before, is they're constantly bringing it back to us Muggles. and they're constantly pulling it back to the world of muggles and like how that relates to us, and not in a pourquoi kind of tale that Harry Potter does it, but in more of because quite honestly, there is no reason that if everybody knows about it, I know America, I have a hard time believing there's not some Marines trying to shoot Voldemort in the head. I know what we do. I know what we like doing, and I have a hard time believing that there's not one crazy, ex-military guy there with an arsenal. I have a hard time believing that. So they interject that into the series so well, and it's worth a watch, even if you don't like it for the visual look of it. It's a great period piece, even though it's not from a period. It does take you back to that time. Other TV shows on my list, I finally watched Fairy Tail after seeing it on every half-naked picture on the internet of people posting that. So that was a good anime that I hadn't got around to. And video games, I'm Patricking Skyward Sword. That's like
but
7
it's a Zelda
years.
game.
It's
a Zelda game.
I know. I love being Link so much, and I love that it's sort of open world, and that I can go on journeys and quests to get all the parts I need to upgrade. And I've been playing it for like 6 years, and then every once in a while, a Pokemon game comes out, and that takes up my entire life. I'm a big Pokemon head, and Pokemon is now ruined. I'm considering buying the next generation. So did you hear about Hoopla?
No.
Sorry, Hoopa.
That's still not ringing a bell.
So I haven't finished Zelda because I bought that game when my Wii Black came out, which is the one without the GameCube things. And like I bought that years ago, and I bought Skyward Sword as soon as it came out, which was at virtually the same time that unit came out. And super jealous you saw the symphony concert. Really wanted to go and see that. Cause it's all Skyward Sword. As far as I know, they didn't really play a lot of that's why you didn't really recognize a lot of it, I think. Cause like it's all Skyward Sword.
That particular concert, they were doing a lot of Skyward Sword, but also like a lot of, cause I haven't played like the more modern ones. So like it was a lot of Skyward Sword, a lot of Twilight Princess, a lot of, Majora's Mask. So, basically the ones that I hadn't like gotten really deep into. Like as far as the stuff that I knew, yeah, they weren't playing a lot of that.
So every time a Pokemon game comes out, I get really into it. I breed, I play the post game, I make my own Pokemon, I'm messing with IVs and EVs, trying to be competitive, seeing what other people's lines are, seeing if I can make like a weird line of like 1 year I decided I am the dojo master and I will only play with fighting Pokemon, like even online. Like, I'm super into that, like, the RP element of RPG. So every time one of those games come out, it ruins me playing a game like Zelda or Halo or any of those games, like the big games, because I want to play Pokemon. And, it's been a fucking season with Pokemon since, again, that no one was making those original X-Men movies thinking there will be a day when 19 Marvel movies are coming out. I did not buy Skyward Sword thinking they will make 6 Pokemon games in 6 years. I got tricked by Black White 2, and so that's why it's been taking me so. But Hoopa ruins all of Pokemon because, and this is what I want to float by Patrick. Maybe he'll hear about it. So Pokemon's supposed to be about science, it's supposed to be about evolution, and Hoopa just reveals it's a character that was created by a wizard and has magic powers. Well, there's no more science. So
this is one of the new Pokemon?
This will be the new legendary in the new game.
Okay.
This will be the big legendary, Hoopa, who essentially can do anything it wants and has teleportation rings. It can move through time and space using these rings that it has, these hoops it wears. It's sort of an Arabian character. And it was created by a wizard. And they show this wizard doing magic, like just magic with a wand. So this whole thing of evolution, a brilliant game that was like, evolution can be weird too. Like learn about how an animal adapts and becomes stronger is now just about magic. And I think if that's the case, why not play Final Fantasy? Why not play a good RPG? Like why am I playing this game that I only like the lore of? It's a tough time for me. And then I'm reading some bad books. I'm reading Redwall, which is an okay book. There's a current comic book moratorium because I was spending a lot. And so I was like, take a break, read things twice that you've been meaning to go back to. So in a few months, I will be like finishing Akira for the first time and like getting really back on my game with comic books and getting into trades. But as I've heard, it's been a crazy. I've been doing this for like a year now. As I've heard, it's like a crazy year to really. Like I was better off skipping. There's a lot going on, like a lot of directions.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm in a situation where I can't really afford them. I'm currently buying a lot of books, and I need to cut them, most of them anyway, and I think I'm gonna end up cutting almost everything and keeping Archie and Jughead of all things. Like, those are my two favorite comics right now.
So I missed a good year. I chose a good year to skip. If you, of all people, are like, well, the only good thing to keep reading right now is Archie, I think I did okay for the year.
Well, now, to be fair, the new Archie and Jugheads are phenomenal books. But, you know, as far as like my Marvel and DC stuff goes, it's like, I love the new Thor and I love the new Doctor Strange, and I'll probably hold on to those. But most of the other like new Marvel stuff that I picked up this year has fallen off by the wayside, like in a big way. And like once DC relaunched yet again, I was like, okay, that's a good time for me to get off. So I did.
Well, my cousin also pointed out, and I think you were right in assessing like 7 months ago that like it's not profitable for Marvel to make new characters because if they're not in the movies, there's no money in it for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a weird year for comics. So that's what I've been doing. What have you been up to? What have you been reading? What have you been watching?
Watching wise, I mean, I guess this is topical. I marathoned through like the entire series of Luke Cage with friend of the show, John Golson, over the weekend.
Man.
Which was a lot of fun. Okay. So John writes for movies.com. He needed to watch the entire series over the weekend because he had to write a review of the entire series for movies.com that was due Monday. So
maybe it's bad to say how close he's cutting that deadline on air, Julian.
Maybe. Well, no. I mean, because it's not, I mean, that's the thing is that, I mean, the show came out last Friday. The thing was due on Monday. So, I mean, that's all he could do. But, so, you know, part of this might be like what they talk about, like the reviewers crunch. Like you'll hear this with like game reviewers where it's like, well, maybe you would have liked that game a little bit more if you hadn't had to cram 40 hours into like 3 days. You know, like, because then all the frustrations in a game are kind of compounded because not only is it frustrating, but you can't step away from it like you normally would because, you know, if I get frustrated by a game, I can set it down for a couple days and then come back to it, but a reviewer can't. But, you know, like, so Luke Cage, the first episode is weak, in my opinion, and John's as well. But then episodes 2 through 5-ish and maybe 6 are like excellent. Like it ramps up to such a way, and the villain of that show is one of the best villains. Like that's one thing I was going to say earlier when we were talking about like the comic movie stuff. I do think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff has been weak with villains for the most part.
Yeah. Loki is the villain in 2 movies. Like who has ever given a shit about Loki that reads Marvel comics?
But I think he's also the best characterization. Like, I think it's Loki and I think Red Skull are like the best villains that they've had. And then the rest have been kind of weak sauce. So, you know, like Ronan the Accuser in Guardians is like a really cool movie adaptation of that character, but they don't do anything with him. But the Marvel, like the Netflix shows have been on fire when it comes to their villains. Like the only reason that I really like enjoyed Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage as much as I did was the villains. Like Wilson Fisk in Daredevil is amazing. Kilgrave and Jessica Jones he's the only reason I kept going with that show because I did not like the main character at all. And then same thing with Luke Cage. It's not that I didn't like Luke Cage. He's fine, but he spends the entire series being like, well, I don't really want to be a hero, you know, and then, you know, he does stuff and it's like, oh, well, maybe I want to be a hero, but then he waffles back and forth for the entire 13 episodes. And it's like, dude, shit or get off the pot. Like this is not compelling. But the most fun that I had was watching John's like increasing displeasure as the show went on as the hour, you know, because we're running out of time, right? Like, you know, it's Sunday. It's like 8:00. We've still got 4 more episodes. And they're an hour long. Like they're not like 42 minutes like your regular, like, you know, network television show, and nothing's happening. And, you know, the focus is coming further off of Luke Cage and more on like a secondary villain that isn't as interesting as the main villain. And it's like, John was just like, I don't want to watch Luke Cage anymore. I want to do something else, but I have to watch Luke Cage.
See, now, your friend, I actually was thinking about this week with Luke Cage. And like, again, this very pertinent argument I had with my cousin. But the issue with all those things you're saying there is like, I think there's this attitude with comic book nerds nowadays where it's like, it's Coke or Pepsi. And it's like, no, either of the sodas, drink a different soda. Like, there's so much Hong Kong cinema I have to catch up on. There's so much anime I haven't seen. This world is not limited to the two badly run companies that have been making movies for a whole 9 years. Like, I don't need to choose between Luke Cage and nothing. There's so many other animes just on Netflix alone. There's so many other action movies I haven't seen on action series and things like that I haven't seen alone, where it's like, you know, even the way that John and you were criticizing it, it's like, yeah, those are legitimate criticisms if it's the only show like this. Like, but we're not in that era anymore. Like, I'm not forgiving the fact that most of Green Arrow is garbage. Like,
we're gonna have words.
Whoa, but here's my point. It's like, for Star Trek, I think that the nerd culture needs to shift a little, where it's like, my opinion on it is one thing, but the fact is, when Star Trek, the original, and even Next Generation, and even and at Deep Space Nine is where people fall off, because when Deep Space Nine comes out, sci-fi is all over TV, and there really isn't a reason to just choose that. But like, we come from this culture of saying like, oh, TOS, you know, it's so good, and like, part of that is recognizing the time. Is that like, there was nothing else at the time that's so revolutionary, it's so cool, and like, you can still appreciate that boldness nowadays. But it's like, I don't have to forgive anything with these big companies because they're not like indie people. I'm not like supporting them. Like, they're gonna make their nut no matter what I do. It's like, I can just turn it off. And that's why, like, my thing, comic book nerds, is no farmer keeps growing watermelons expecting it to be corn. They start growing corn. Stop investing. I love these Marvel nerds for years. They've been upset by every single movie. It's like, stop watching. That's how they make their money.
And that's the thing, is that John and I both liked the show. He's a particularly interesting person because he's a huge fan and scholar of comic books and a huge fan and scholar of film. So, of course, when the two come together, like, he's going to consume that, you know, but he made some good points is that like, the show like builds up all this steam and then it proceeds to like lose all its momentum, which is more of just like, that's just bad plot development, you know, as far as Marvel or DC or anything like that. But, you know, I would disagree. Like, but maybe it doesn't take much to entertain me, Mike. So like that's the thing, is that like,
me neither. I've seen most of House Hunters International. Don't worry. It doesn't take a lot. I don't want people to think I'm some snob. I've seen like a bunch of the Kardashians. I've seen almost all of Chopped. I've seen a lot of Property Brothers. Like, don't think I'm so hard to have fun.
Well, but my thing is that, like, comic book movie wise, like, I've enjoyed probably 95% of the movies that I've watched. You know, like, even the like bad ones, like, yeah, like, you know, like Green Lantern, I liked. I didn't love it. Like, it's not one of my favorites, but like, I still had fun with it. You know, like, that's the thing, is like, most of these movies I just go and I have fun. You know, I don't get like really offended or bent out of shape most of the time. Like, I didn't really like Suicide Squad and I didn't really like Batman v Superman, but that was more from like, they're constructed poorly. Like, they're stitched together in weird ways that don't make sense as just watching a movie from like beginning to end. Like, they just feel weird. So yeah, like, I'm pretty much cool with whatever. That's why I said, you know, like, I've actually legitimately loved all of the Marvel movies. It's just that there's a few movies towards the bottom of my list that are like, well, like, I still like these a lot, but like, I'm not going to like say like, oh, you gotta watch this movie, you know, like, I'd be like, no, you know, you can probably skip these are fine. Like,
well, you know, part of my big issue is, this is not that I'm like upset. It's just, I'm not going to go to for me, summer blockbusters, I really gotta be trash to enjoy any of them nowadays. As someone who's gone to art school, it's like, if I'm going to see your big blockbuster movie, it's like, this is the closest I'm going to get to a rave. I'm going to be trash beyond all belief. And I'm going to have fun. I'm going to yell at those Transformers to transform more. I'm going to go in that theater and shout at the screen and then fall asleep from excitement halfway through. That's what I'm going to do because I drank a bunch before. But for me, I like to know my history. And like knowing your history is a big part of this. And like, that's why I like when John comes on the show because like those episodes for me, I'm always like, yes, someone remembers. And like a lot of comic book nerds don't take the time to remember the fact that they have made literal comic book movies. They are the worst cartoons in all of history. The Spider-Man and Hulk cartoon shows are notoriously so ridiculous. And the only reason I like them is because I can't afford to buy all of the comic books around them. And so it's a good, cheap solution to reading all of those original Spider-Man, but just literally tracing Stan Lee's frames and then taking the frame and tilting it across shit. It's like, know your history. Know that like Marvel at any moment we are in a pulp era. You know, if you know what that means in terms of cinema and things like that, I'm guilty of having to participate in it, but we're in a pulp era and Marvel is great in pulp eras. Marvel does great when pulp is up. Pulp meaning we print, it's in a pulp era, it's better to invest in paper than it is to invest in art because we're making so much. And you see that with companies like Amazon where it's smarter to invest in servers than it is to invest in art. And that's where we're at right now. And Marvel does great in those periods and it's good to engage with culture. And that makes me happier than anything. So I don't poo-poo nerds, but that is what we're in right now. And so to say like, you know, that I can shit on all of them, but at the same time, I know what they make when they gotta crank shit out. And it's not their best stuff. You know what I mean? Their best stuff was I think the golden age is 20 years ago when they thought they were dying. They thought they were on their way out. Just like Stan Lee thought when he created all these characters. He thought it was a long shot. That's when people really make their good shit, in my opinion. But you know, keep watching. It's good.
Yeah, you know, and it's fine. Like, I know JD, like, he felt the exact opposite that John and I did on Luke Cage, where he felt that it started weak and then ended strong. We were like, no, it's kind of the other way around. So, you know, everybody gets what they want. You know, they're gonna pull what they will from whatever they're consuming. But I thought it was definitely worth bringing up since it just came out. You know, it'll be interesting to me to see like where they go as far as like doing this Defenders series, because they're going to bring in like all the Netflix characters together. Cause like, you know, Marvel does get dinged a lot for like trying to set up the next movie a lot, but they didn't do any of that in Luke Cage. Like there's really no like setup of like the Iron Fist show coming out, and they don't even mention, like they barely mention any of like what happened in Jessica Jones or Daredevil. So it's really more of a standalone show. And I guess, you know, you can almost put that in its like positive box, you know, because it does try to do its own thing on its, you know, by itself. And the performances were great. Again, like the guy who plays, the main villain, Cottonmouth, one of the best performances I've seen from a bad guy, you know, probably in the last like 5 or 6 years. Just really excellent, like really complex type of character where it's like, he's ruthless and he's really smart and he's really debonair, but then he's also got this like undercurrent of rage that is bubbling like just under the surface, but concealed very well. Like there's a lot going on there, and I really dug that.
What's your just to get a quick poll of your history with these things? What's your opinion on Darkman?
The
Liam Neeson one.
Was it Liam Neeson?
Yeah, he's in the first one. He's not in any of the other ones. Well, the genius plot of Darkman is that his face is never the same.
Right. I mean, I saw the original Darkman like a long time ago when I was a kid, you know, and so that's not really a good opinion to have. Like, I remember thinking it was entertaining enough. Like, it's funny because I remember like I guess the villain was the mentally challenged, like, assistant on Law and Order.
Yeah.
Or no, LA Law.
Oh, right.
And, like, I remember that because I remember there was a part where, like, Darkman, like, takes a whole bunch of pictures to, like, make a mask of him to, like, you know, pretend to be him or something. And that's really all I remember of that movie.
All right.
I did not know it was Liam Neeson. He
plays the original one. And then the genius part of it is that they change. Just trying to get, you know, there's patterns of things when we start to do more of stuff. And so I'm always trying to get people's pulses on an era.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I remember the video game for the Nintendo more than I do the movie.
Oh my gosh. Can't wait. Get ready for our broadband to get weaker as I buy that game on Amazon during this show. Shut up. Which Nintendo system? I have a lot of them. Quick, Julian.
It was for the NES.
I don't get ready for me to buy that motherfucker. Darkman game.
Watch some YouTube videos first, Mike, because it's not good.
No,
it's not
shut up. I'm buying it. I don't want to get it ruined. Julian, if I had watched videos of the movie, I wouldn't have watched the movie. They're all dog shit. I'm going to buy the game before I see the game. Oh, $17. Yes, that's so doable. Oh,
that's not bad.
Yes, that's not bad at all. Gimme. All right, I just bought it. Okay, let's go on with the podcast or whatever we're doing here.
All right. Well, I'd say we should go ahead and roll on into Chrono Crossing. So why don't we cue that music? This week we're Chrono Crossing back to 2006, which I feel was a little bit of a weak year. I was going down the list and I was a little hard pressed to find my game. Angelo kind of agreed as well, but Mike, what was your 2006 pick?
If I hadn't listened to this show, I probably wouldn't have realized what I realized about 2006 when you sent me this year. So I, of course, huge fan of, TMB, huge fan of this show. And when I say huge fan, I know we only met like 4 weeks ago. I do podcasts hard and heavy. Okay. So I've been like nothing but I'm like 20 episodes of finishing both of your shows.
Yeah. Just quick aside, like Mike has been sending me like tweets and like Twitter messages, like commenting on things that I actually do remember just because I spend so much time like editing these shows and stuff. But I'm like, holy crap, he's going really deep. Like,
like nothing makes me feel worse because I'm binging both of those shows to be like, I have like a correction that I want to talk to you about because I think it's interesting from episode 3. Or episode 7. Episode 3 is when people find it flattering. So when I get to 7 through 12, the people are like, hey, shut up, man. That was like a year ago. I wouldn't have realized it had I not watched this. This is a very strong, like it is a weak year if you look at this show where it's like, hey, Xbox 360, so many heavy hitters every single year for that system. And Xbox One, even now, it's getting so ramped up. And same with PS3 and PS4. It's like, those years are amazing. But to your point, like I sent a tweet out that was inspired by the show. The tweet was, I don't know if I'm going to buy, the new PlayStation. Can it even run Microsoft Word? And that was inspired by you guys pointing out at the last E3, the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One came out. You guys were saying, you know, it used to be that the gaming world is making the best computers out there and then PC has to catch up. But
right.
Really, you look at the Xbox One, you look at the PlayStation 4, they're not great computers.
Yeah,
you know,
and this is the first generation where the consoles were almost outmatched out of the gate. You know, like if you're part of the PC master race, you've been getting a better experience pretty much since the year that the PS4 came out. And that's crazy.
I would say not even almost. I would say right out the gate, except for the fact that these companies have proprietary code. And that's the only reason they don't work right away, is that they code for these systems because of politics and things like that. Like, right out of the gate, my computer is faster than that PlayStation. Maybe not at some things, but pretty much if I go out and buy their video card, which I can do, then it's the same system. You know, I can overclock the crap out of any computer and then it's the same system. So it was, and I think that this year, why I was excited to talk about it is like, I realized like, this is a great year for the console because the PlayStation 2 was a dope computer compared to most PCs when it came out, like for years. And that system is still releasing games like for years, like longer than most systems that I can think of since like maybe the SNES, like that generation, which dominated for a while. Like it was the first time in a while that you saw like oh, that system is still as good as anything, except for online, which was still crap no matter what you had. PlayStation especially, horrible online network on the PlayStation 2 as compared to the Xbox, but still compared to your computer, probably better. But it was really all dependent on what internet you had. And so for me, this was like the dark years. And like, I was still playing Red Blue and borrowing I was borrowing people's Advanced when I wanted to play the game, the Pokemon that was on there. And for me, I looked at the DS and was like, that's not worth the $200 plus $50 for the game to play Pearl, which is a game I love. Pearl is a game I own and love and played on the 3DS. But like, that's not a game I was going to buy at the time because my PlayStation 2 was still dope. And that was my system at the time. And it was a great year. This is when the retro game fad is starting to swing up so high, and you could buy. I bought an SNES from a garage sale for $10. I had an N64, but I bought tons of games in this year because I was just like, this is a new fad. And GameStop, of all people, was selling like, that's when it was like GameStop was still selling N64 for like games for $5. It was a great year for that. Mm-hmm. But when it comes down to it, the new game that's coming out that year, honestly, one of the only games on the list that I'm playing that comes out that year is Destroy All Humans 2.
Okay.
I like the first one. I like the vibe of it. I like the open worldness of it. I don't know. I think San Andreas is the next year or the year before, but that pretty much is what I would have been playing.
Yeah, those games were cool. Like, I think I probably played a little bit of Destroy All Humans, the first one, like, cause I would have still been at Game Fellows at the time. So I would have tried it out then. I didn't own either of them, but I should add those to my list. I should pick those up for my PS2 and try those out. Cause it's a really cool aesthetic. It's a cool setting that you don't really see used very often. There was one game on the PS1 going back to like our PlayStation episode where we were talking about really obscure games. And it's going to kill me because it was one of those really weird games that our boss Ben loved. And it was that type of aesthetic. It was that 50s, like sci-fi style, game where you're like in a UFO, you're like in a flying saucer type thing. And it was kind of like an overhead shooter. But, it's going to kill me. I don't remember the name, but yeah, I really like that look. And it sucks that, that company, and I'm blanking on the name now too. My mind is going. They're the ones who did, the Mercenaries games, and they worked on the first two Star Wars Battlefronts. And it starts with a P.
Oh my gosh. Not Psy something, right?
Pandemic Studios.
I knew it was a weird thing.
So it's a shame that they're now defunct because I think that would have been a great license that could have gone forward. And who knows who owns it these days, but that's one that I think would especially with today's like hardware, you could do so many cool things with that series.
Well, it turned into, so the ridiculousness of it is not lost. The ridiculousness of it is not lost. Really, I feel that the spiritual successor to Destroy All Humans was, the most recent GTA, the Saint Rose games, like this idea of ridiculous weapons, beating people up with dildos and such. Like, that vibe isn't lost, but Destroy All Humans 2 wasn't a great game story-wise as compared to Destroy All Humans 1, which was a big hit, which was, I think I loved your guys' PlayStation 1 episode because I was like, oh, for me, that's not PlayStation 1 at all. For me, PlayStation 1 was like, we couldn't afford to get all those games because all of you were working at like game shows, at game stores. It was like, hell yeah, like you got all these cool experiences with it. And those sort of forgotten classics are sort of, I think Destroy All Humans will sort of float into. I was still playing Battlefront that year. I was still playing the original Battlefront, which is still a great game. And I was still playing Spider-Man 2, which is, in my opinion, one of the best superhero open world games to this day. If you can get a copy that didn't shit out, like a lot of PlayStation 2 games did. And that's sad. Most of my PlayStation 2 games, they don't work. Not all of them were put out on black discs. A lot were put out on, CDs and just used with the code and DVDs, and they don't work nowadays.
I haven't experienced that myself, but, I am increasingly worried about that, about I mean, I'm a physical media guy, but at the same time, it's like physical media craps out after a while. So
yeah, everyone should know that. Let me make that announcement here. Hey, yeah, 10 years for VHS, but 25 at most for DVDs and CDs. Start playing your CDs you got in the 90s because they're going to stop working. Like, it's inevitable. All physical media dies. You've never seen something from ancient Rome that looks just like new. Because everything that's made of stuff turns into shit.
Well, yeah, I don't have a good segue from that. I'm just going to say my name or say my game. It was really hard to not pick the Final Fantasy game that came out this year because it was Final Fantasy 12 and it's an excellent game, but it was also like the first, well, one of two Final Fantasy games where I started it and then put it down for a really long time before I finally finished it. The other one was Final Fantasy 8. So that isn't it. The game that I actually ended up picking is a game that I didn't play it the year that it came out, but I bought it later on. I actually played it for the first time with the Rebel FM Game Club when they still did that. And it is, Hitman Blood Money, which.
Yes, another horrible movie.
I haven't seen the Hitman movies.
Don't.
Yeah. It was my first Hitman game, and I've actually only played one other, which was Absolution, but, Blood Money is a wonderful introduction to that series. Every level is just so innately memorable to me because I spent so much time. I mean, it's definitely one of those games where, you know, it's a trial and error thing. Like, it's not something where you're supposed to, like, you know, here's the level, you go through the level, you finish the level, and you're done. It's like, no, you start the level, you fail, you know, you start it again, you get a little bit further, you fail, you start looking at the way that, like, all of the mechanics are working together. It's a game where you actually try to pull the curtain back and see what's under the surface as far as how everything works. You know, it's not so much a game of, you know, interacting with NPCs and, you know, killing enemies and stuff. It's more of a game of, okay, if I do this, what is it going to do to this character? Like, how is it going to change his walk cycle? You know, how can I get him off of his normal animation cycle? You know, things like that. And there's so many different ways to take out each assassination target in each level. And the thing that's so great about Hitman Blood Money is that when you're at your baddest ass, whatever that word would
No,
be.
let's land on a decision on this. Because now it's all I'm going to think about for 6 days.
When you're at your most badass, that would be the correct.
Badassest, I think is better because the baddest ass is not necessarily like the badness of it is not what we want. We want the whole term. It's like you're supposed to technically say Xbox is 360. So I think we want badassest.
Okay. When you're at your most badassest, is when it looks like an accident. Like one of my favorite levels, I think it's the second or third level, where you're supposed to take out basically Hugh Hefner, and his son. And you're at his like winter like home, and it's like this like Christmas party. And there's all these steps to get to the place where you want to be. And there's things that you have to do, but like one of the best feelings in the world in that level is when his son is just on a balcony smoking and you just push him over and, you know, he slipped. Like that's it. It was just a terrible accident, you know, and you literally just walk right out. You get onto the boat and you leave like nothing happened. And because they don't even discover the body because it's like off of a mountain and it's so cool. And there's so many different ways to go through each level. And yeah, I mean, you can go in guns blazing if you want, but you know, there's so many more subtle ways to get to your objective. And I love that game so much. It's one that I always think about. And it's one that I always think about replaying. And I'm not a guy who replays a lot of video games. I'm usually like on to the next thing. So that says a lot, you know, for me to actually be thinking about like, oh, you know what? I should pop in Blood Money and at least play the first couple levels again because it was really good.
Have you? Because one of the things about the PlayStation 2, is that what you played on PlayStation 2 or it was a dual release?
This was actually dual release. It was on PlayStation 2, Xbox, and Xbox 360. I play the 360 version.
So, because I was going to say one of the worst things that the PlayStation 2 did was like robot games hold up really well. Battlefront plays really great even to this day on PlayStation 2. going back and playing realistic games, I find are bad on the PlayStation 2, which was my system at the time. And the Xbox was a little bit better. Xbox was always focused more on rounded and flesh tones and things like that as opposed to PlayStation. But like, when I go back and I put in like games with real people in the PlayStation 2, I'm like, no, fuck this. I cannot do this at all. This is so bad looking. Like, it just looks like staring at a painting that someone copied and pasted 1,000 times into an email. It was like, it's over 25 megabytes. So I gotta turn it into 100 by 100 pixels. It's like, this looks like bullshit. So that Xbox 360 definitely, this show and TMB have been like, they were talking about Five Nights at Freddy's.
Uh-huh.
Like, and you're talking about Until Dawn. Like, I don't play enough games where the RPG element is forced on you, and like, you know, it's forced in a good way. Like, here's my story, I'm gonna tell it. Like, both those podcasts have inspired me to be like, I should be playing a Hitman type game where like, you know, the story is more a scene like that where that's the only option, and I get that story out of the visual medium. Like, you guys have both inspired me to be like, I should play games that I can pop back in because it's like watching an old movie, just playing N64 and California Racing.
Yeah, and you know, that's the thing, and the only drawback to being like like a really passionate gamer, as far as this being like my number one hobby, is that it's harder to like be able to experience it like a movie, because like a movie, that's a 2-hour thing. I can just pop that into my Blu-ray player and I can watch that movie over and over and over, which I do. But, you know, I can't pop in a 30-hour game and play it over and over and over because there's just not enough time.
You'd be surprised at how much I can tell everyone else to fuck off.
There you go. And, you know, and the thing about Hitman Blood Money in particular is that, like, you don't have to really play the whole game. You can just be like, you know what? I really want to play the level that takes place when they're rehearsing a play. And just do that level.
Fuck,
you know?
Yeah! Like, I love that kind of, I think like to me, games that focus on being entertaining and flipping the medium, like, I love that. I love, what's that, god damn it, I won't remember it now. So instead, I'll just say Zelda again. I'm trying to remember one of those Xbox Market games, and I don't know why I can't. Battle Block. That game.
Oh, Battle Block Theater.
Yeah. That game focuses on funniness, and like, I wanted to go back and play the funny games. Like, you know, there's so many parts that are in your blind side of video games that when you take 6 years to finish a Zelda, limit you.
Right. All right. Well, we've got a pic from Angelo, again, emailing us, and he says, it's Gears of War. 26-year-old Angelo very much loved shooting things with a machine gun and chainsawing them in half. Everything about this game seems so fresh and new and well considered. These days, while the third-person shooter has been done to death, I still think this game has something special in its single-player campaign. The way everything feels, seems just right for the type of game it is, like how the camera angle swings down low and bounces around like it's handheld when the character breaks into a roadie run. I don't think it's a flawless masterpiece for sure. I mean, its color palette was just so dark. And he says, there's other colors besides brown and gray out there, but that's actually my complaint about the last generation almost as a whole, and filmmaking around that time as well. It's like, I've said it before, it's like everything seemed to be like gray and sepia.
Yeah, especially, I mean, at the time, 2006, Sin City and The Matrix were still rocking our world, you know, and so color themes, and also at the time, Harry Potter they'd switched over to David Yates. So, and he's the king of filters. And so it's like, for that time of, you're dead on for like, oh yeah, it was totally like one-dimensional colors. Sin City, the Matrix is all in green. Harry Potter is all in blue or orange. And, you know, Sin City was black and white. Like, you're dead on for depicting the era. Yeah. I don't notice it as much in games, but I didn't play as many games. Like I said, Destroy All Humans is my number one game at the time. So I don't know that I can say about games, but from film, you're dead on.
Yeah. We've got a few over at pixelbit.com. Transmet2033 says, I wrote down Resistance Fall of Man. I'm just one of those Insomniac fanatics. But then Xrian commented, in response to that, and then Transmet said that this was the reason that he would say it. And Xrian said, Resistance was amazing. I love the replay value with new weapons added, to the first playthrough. I had hoped the 2 would do that, but it didn't. And it's one of my favorite games of last gen. But then that wasn't Xrian's choice. He actually selected Okami. which is kind of another.
Yes, that's a fucking great choice.
It's I was going to say it was like cross-platform, but it's technically not. I mean,
no, if you're not playing it on
PS2,
if you're not playing it on the Wii.
Well, but the Wii was kind of like processor-wise, it was kind of like a half step from the GameCube. So I would almost say it's kind of on par. But anyway, he says that Okami was a game that surpassed expectations to me. It initially caught my attention because of its art, but the gameplay definitely kept pace. It was a joy to play and amazing to stare at. Even better on the PS3. Did they release on the PS3?
Who cares? Who said that?
This was
X-Ray. Fuck you. That's the best choice. I'm so fucking angry I didn't choose Okami. How did I fucking miss that? That's like the best. Why would I choose any? What the hell have I been saying? I'm yelling about being an anime nerd, and I chose fucking Destroy All Humans when there was Okami. Shit, I suck. Such a good choice.
That's why I love the Chrono Crossing segment, because we get all these different choices.
Not expecting this emotion. I feel so impotent.
Michael117 agrees with Angelo. He says, I'll have to choose Gears. Gears of War was, dragged the whole genre of third-person shooting forward more than a few steps. Every aspect of the technical design in Gears felt chiseled by people who not only understood game design, but also how to program the engine in order to make it feel exactly the way they wanted. The characters had weight and impact while being sharp and responsive. Even things like reloading felt good in Gears. Nowadays we take all these small details of a game's feel for granted, since most third-person action games in 2016 feel at least decent, but go back and compare Gears to its contemporaries and you'll notice the difference.
I love Gears. I didn't have the system at the time, but like it's a great game. I don't like games like whatchamacallit, what's the horrible game that's impossible to play? The Souls game. Dark Souls. Yeah, that shitty game. I don't like that horrible, hard to play shitty game not because it's horrible and hard to play, but because like I love the essence of what is Gears and like that sort of rhythm, that sort of get over here, get in a crouch, pop up, shoot, go over there, get in. Like I like that rhythm to a game. It's like essentially real world Mario. It's like a grittier version of Mario where it's just about rhythm and pace. And that game does it so well, and I was blown away by the graphics, even at the time.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially the time that like a lot of people will say that Gears of War was like when that generation came into its own, where they're like, oh, this is why you buy an Xbox 360. It is because it can do this, you know. Because up until that point, like a lot of the games were still kind of straddling that line between PS2 era and what the 360 could do, and then Gears of War was like, no. There's a lot more of this to the system than what you originally thought. Catherine Hauser says, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Love the gameplay, storyline, weapons, characters, and overall style of the game. 10 years later, Midna is still one of my favorite Zelda characters.
Chibis, right? It's a chibi game. Big heads?
No, that's Wind Waker.
That's Wind Waker. What the hell is Twilight Princess?
Yeah, Twilight Princess was the return to like the more mature looking Zelda aesthetic. That was the one where he turns into a wolf.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's more,
it came out
it's still Shade Cell, right? It's not necessarily back to like what we see nowadays with Zelda, right? I gotta look at pictures.
It's more of a gritty looking Zelda. Like, it was definitely their 180 pivot from Wind Waker, because so many people complained about the Wind Waker graphics.
Oh shit,
or
this is dark.
The art style. Yeah.
Oh shit! How did I not play? Well, because I didn't own a GameCube. But this is
yeah. It was GameCube and Wii. It came out at the same time for both systems. Because I forgot that the Wii launched in 2006. So
yeah. Wii Black, which if you don't know, like you guys are such early adapters on the show, so you don't know the struggle of a Wii Black. I can't play GameCube games. You know, like I have to buy a GameCube. There's no way to play a GameCube game on a Wii Black. It's the cheaper version. It's got better Wi-Fi. I can watch Netflix like a motherfucker, but I cannot play. I've heard that's why I don't own Twilight Princess for it, because I've heard it's a GameCube game. Do not buy it for your Wii.
That's true, yeah, because they reversed, like everything is mirrored on the Wii because of the waggle controls. So
because of the lefty thing with Link.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so. Go fuck yourselves. Just change it. What is easier to say, put the nunchuck in your left hand or to flip the whole game and make it suck? I don't get Nintendo ever. I wish I understood game design better so I can understand why that's the easier choice.
And then Casey ends things with a very unique choice. Chrono Cross is Elite Beat Agents. 10 years later, and I still pick this game up every now and then, and I haven't beat it. The game's as tough as it is addicting, and its style is so charming and hilarious that I don't care how half the songs I don't care that half the songs in this game are awful.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
It is a rhythm game for the DS where you use the stylus to like tap in time with the music, and you also drag and hold for certain notes and stuff. The American version of the game uses straight up licensed music, and some of it is like really of the time. Like I think Skater Boy from Avril Lavigne is in there.
That's a timeless song. I don't know what you're talking about.
And there's some other like kind of strange choices, but it's an excellent game. And I've been meaning to pick up the Japanese version also because, you know, it's just got like original like J-pop style tunes in it, but the gameplay is still excellent.
I'm willing to look stupid as a nerd. You guys talk about that a lot. I always thought that you couldn't play Japanese games on your American console. I thought they were incompatible.
You know, I'm gonna have to double check. The DS might be one of those systems where they region locked it. I know that, I know the 3DS is region locked, but like by and large, the Nintendo handhelds were wide open.
Wow.
So you can play Japanese Game Boy games on like an American Game Boy. I mean, when I worked at Game Fellas, we imported the shit out of Pokemon Gold and Silver. Like kids did not care. They were just like, no, I just want the new Pokemon. Like, you know, and they would download guides off the internet as far as like, you know, what you had to do.
Will a Japanese Gold and Silver not shit out? Like, do you know about that thing?
No.
So all cartridges have a battery in them, and the thinking is,
right.
And so on the Gold and Silver, famously, the batteries shit out like day one. And so, the only time I played Gold and Silver was a friend lent it to me for a 12-hour plane ride. And I was like, I'm going to play as much Gold and Silver as I can for the next 12 hours. And that's it. Those little Pokemon are going to Pokemon heaven. And that's it. Like I had to stay up for 12 hours and play Pokemon.
That's interesting. I mean, like I said, I was working in retail at the time, and I don't recall any Gold and Silvers coming back to our store because of that. But I did end up working at another like used video game store in 2009, which was like years after I left Game Fellas, well, after Game Fellas closed. And I do remember, I think they had to test the individual Pokemon cartridges for the batteries. Yeah. So yeah, it might have been that for some reason the Pokemon cartridges wore out faster. But like I have Super Nintendo games that the batteries still work in. So, I mean, they were only supposed to last 5 years, but I mean, those games are 20 years old and more now. And like, I can still use them. So I don't know. I think it was a thing of hubris with
the Pokemon games. I had answers too on Twitter.
Okay.
I don't know what this is in response to. Hopefully you'll be able to tell me because I'm not as up on things as you are. Matthew Barnett at mbarnett, NRTH91 says Molag Bal. Is that a video game?
I think that was his answer to the earlier one. I think that's the area in the Elder Scrolls that he wanted to live in.
Okay. And then moving on to other person who responded to me, Gaijin Harry Potter at WC Bolt says Resident Evil 3 and Spelunky. I know what Resident Evil is. I don't know what Spelunky is.
Neither of those came out that year though. He might not have understood the question.
Might not have understood the question.
But that's okay. Cause most of our regular listeners do understand the question and we love you and appreciate you. Again, we're not going to be doing a normal format episode for episode 99, but in episode 100, we will be chrono crossing back to 2005. That's when Transformers the movie takes place. So I can actually say, it is the year 2005. That's gonna make me so happy.
I am Optimus Prime. Me and Scooby-Doo will go on an adventure. That's what I do as Optimus Prime. For some reason, the front part of my mouth is inaccessible to me. Why do I talk like I'm trying to hold a lemon in my mouth? I'm Frank Welker, most talented artist, and I'm being lazy as balls. This is the Allspark.
It's Peter Cullen, and don't talk any smack about Peter Cullen.
No, is it?
Yeah, Frank Welker is Megatron.
Megatron. And then did you guys point that out to me that Spock plays Galvatron?
I probably mentioned it.
Yeah, I forgot about that amazing cameo.
I always told myself that if I ever met Leonard Nimoy, I would have had him sign my copy of Transformers the movie instead of anything Star Trek related, because for me, he was Galvatron.
I would have had him sign Scooby-Doo, what's new Scooby-Doo, and just been like, you proud? You happy? You happy now?
Well, hopefully listeners are proud and happy of Mike and I, because we powered through to like a full-length episode. I told Angela,
full length and bonus goddamn material.
I told Angela, like, oh, it'll probably be like a short but really funny episode. No, it's a average episode of Nerds Without Pants lately. So good on us.
Mike's got podcast stamina. That's all I care about. Someone's like, how long can you podcast? I'm like, how long can you? Let's make this a title fight. No one leaves until we win.
Just wanted to go the distance. Nobody's ever gone the distance with Apollo.
I'm not, listen, I'm not, hold on, dude, I gotta quiet it down. I'm not punchy, you know. I can do this commercial. I'm not punchy. I've been in a few, I got my clock clean, but I'm not punchy. I can read the lines. Rocky 2, it's a dog shit movie.
All right. Well, Mike, before we take off, tell the good listeners a little bit about the shows that you do. I mean, obviously we mentioned a little bit at the beginning, but get it like a nice overview.
I do a bunch of stuff. I try not to do like boring plugs. So here's what I usually do. If you want to, I'll list all the shit I do so I don't seem like I'm training people, but like, FQA for quality assurance, my small pets podcast, 30 podcasts, which is 30 pilots, Chopped and Screwed, which is all about watching Chopped and getting drunk. Those are the three main ones, and then I produce a bunch of others. A new show coming up soon on a big network. Can't announce it yet. But here's what I do when people ask me what my promos are. I sing this little stupid song. This is where you get your Mike Fallek. You can find me at Our Hero Comic before I do all the. Listen to me, listeners. Am I in your ears? Are we at the gym? Where are we? Are we in the car? This is just a you and me moment, okay? I do a lot of podcasts and I don't want to be boring. You can find me if you search Mike Fallek on anything, MikeFalek, or Our Hero Comic, you'll find me. But I have this need to be better than people and to compare myself. So this is what I sing at the end of podcasts when they ask me for promos because I'm self-conscious. So here's what I sing at the end of a podcast is I go, if you like the internet, you'll like butts. If you like the internet, you'll like jokes. If you like the internet, you'll like Mike. Staranus.com. Staranus.com. That's where you can get your Mike Fallek briefer. Other than that, just search me. You don't have to type anus into your work computer. But that's a website that has like the basic rundown of everything I do. And it's fun to sing on a podcast. And I made that jingle where I get to spell anus.
That's very well done. That's a good way to end this thing. Mike, thank you so much for being on and being such a good sport for, we thought we were going to have Patrick. We didn't have Patrick, and, it still worked out well as a 2-man show, and I appreciate you being here. And we'll definitely do it again, hopefully with the full crew on.
Anytime. Literally anytime. I tell podcasters this all the time. If you don't have a guest, text me. I guarantee I'm not doing shit.
There we go. Well, I'll probably take you up on that offer. In the meantime, as always, you can find us on Twitter. You can find Mike at Our Hero Comic. You can find me at Julian_Titus. You can tweet at the show at NWPcast. And of course, go hit up Angelo, at A Roguish Ham to tell him get well soon. And shame, Patrick at some boss for doing homework instead of recording a podcast.
Nerd.
That's going to be it for this episode. Thank you for listening. For myself and Mike, thanks for listening. And keep it pantsless, internet. Goodbye.